Hello, folks. Welcome to the election watch along with Andrew. Currently looking like a Labour landslide, but you never know what shocks and surprises there could be along the way. We will be here until I pass out, which might be an hour or two. Doesn't look like things are going to go very well here. Yeah, school night special. No drinking tonight. I need to be fresh tomorrow. But I'm going to watch some of this. Looks like Mordaunt might be out. Rees-Mogg might be out.
His chance of winning is 47%. So there are some of the big names that we're going to be looking out for.
Some big names coming up there. Anyway, welcome, folks. Hopefully we'll get some guests on to offer some commentary on tonight's results, because I'm limited in what I can say. So it's been an official. Welcome, Rebecca. Welcome, Catherine. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for that. Much more.
Watching Mallet Buffett. Yeah, it sounds boring.
With our guests here in the studio. Steve Baker will talk about our projections that say, I'm afraid for you, show you losing.
Looks like Steve Baker is out and now been interviewed.
You were chuckling away when Angela Rayner was nobly suggesting things might still feel uncertain, but you clearly are deeply sceptical that this result is looking anything like other than the landslide.
Angela Rayner is allowed to be sober. She's going to carry big responsibilities in the government if this exit poll is right. I, however, am allowed to be...
I've got BBC One on.
I think that an electoral meteor...
Looks like the SNP are going to lose some votes according to the exit poll. Some seats, sorry, I should say. Reform, 13 seats. PC, don't know who that is. 2. Lib Dems are going to gain 53. Conservatives are going to lose 241 seats. The Green Party might gain 1 seat.
But I would have to say this.
Big question is who's going to deliver the results first. So 650 seats to declare. Blyth and Sunderland hoping to be the first seat to declare. Attention is building. Links in the chat if anyone wants to come live while we do this. I've got some snacks and some fruit juice to keep me going.
Well, I came into this campaign knowing I was widely expected to lose. I do think the dynamic in Wickham is slightly different to what's generally expected in the polls.
Like the Northern Ireland Minister is going.
I can talk about it if you like. So I think my chances are quite a bit better, but I could easily have lost very heavily. It is just possible there's a path to winning narrowly, but we'll see in the morning. But yeah, I absolutely do accept that the polls indicate that very slim chance. It's going to be an incredibly difficult.
What do you reckon, folks? Do you reckon the polls are right? Will be a Labour landslide, or do we think that there'll be a surprise cast? I've never really known him in that long. Is that fermented that reduced? No, alcohol involved. Blood pressure's too high. Let's see the box to Donald above.
And I think Peter's showing his political experience by sitting here, being able to accept that Labour have had a landslide. It's a pretty devastating night.
Rebecca's got biscuits and Coca-Cola.
Well, I know, Peter, to be fair to you, Peter, you said everything that's happened over the last...
There were no exit poll survey at my poll station when I left.
And notwithstanding my support for leaving the EU, there's no doubt it put the country through a great deal of stress. COVID,
you made quite a lot of that stress.
I need to finish packing this box. I had a mega order.
But I have to say,
so I'm going to try and balance this. Oh, this is going well. Let's finish off packing this mega order. Surprised I'm not amongst them action. There's no action in Wrexham. Right. I'll be back momentarily. Talk amongst yourselves when I fill the packing peanuts in here. Chris Tyler must be disappointed that Pat's not here to flirt with. That's packed. Now we can go with that downstairs. Do-do-do. Da-da-da-do. Da-da-da-do. Da-da-da-do-do. Oh, Peter Mandelson's on the TV. It honestly doesn't look like he's aged a day. Clearly needs Peter Mandelson's skincare regime. Secrets. They're usually all over the place. I don't think Rishi will be staying around for much longer if it carries on this way. I'm just waiting for somebody to trip over a ballot box and spill the papers everywhere. 11:10, we reckon the first result will be in. There's a police helicopter overhead. Right, let's wait this. Oh, 4.4 kilos. So, has the poll results surprised anyone today, or is it as you expected? Hello, Ashley. I'm not getting sacked in the morning. I'm a government official, not a politician.
And if it's accurate, near accurate, he will be contemplating the comprehensive defeat, the brutal battering that he has led his party to. We're expecting to hear from him in the early hours of the morning.
I've got an offer.
4 o'clock. That will be the first time you think
could be having a cha-ching. Reform jumped ship from Conservatives. They're going backwards and forwards all the time, weren't they? Yeah, I will accept that offer.
He is hoping to
Cha-ching.
As the Tory MP for Richmond and Northampton.
All right, Victoria, thank you.
Let's look then, just we've been showing you some of the forecasts of how the Tory vote has fallen away in different parts of the country. Look at that in the north.
Oh, I've hit 5,000 feedback.
24%. Orchestra have dropped by 29% in the Midlands. And there you can see Bridget Phillipson. Now, she looks very happy. She's been the Shadow Education Secretary, one of Keir Starmer's close allies, smiling away at her account in Sunderland.
Right.
And if the poll is anything like right, she will be the Education Secretary shortly. she's inside at Sunderland while they continue to run around outside. Right, let's cross to the other big camp tonight. Let's speak to Fiona Bruce, who is at Camp Starmer. Perhaps a very different atmosphere there. We're going to stay on these pictures, but Fiona, have you seen height or hair of the Labour leader who's on the verge of becoming Prime Minister, according to the poll?
Not hide or hair yet. I mean, the contrast of the atmosphere here compared to what we just saw.
Alright, there we go. All I needed to do before midnight is now done.
Keir Starmer, I'm told, was watching the results of that election poll with friends and family. There were all sorts of caveats around the poll.
Well, I can return to my audience.
He was delighted to see that result. So this is clearly a very important count. This is where he is going to go over and say thank you. We're expecting the results between 2 and 3 in the morning. He will arrive probably 45 minutes before then, about a chance when he's counting the votes, wander around, see what's going on, and then talk to the end. I'm not expecting him as to what he goes on at the moment. We're not going to go home.
I used to pull all night as an election night, but I don't think I'll be doing that today.
Okay, Fiona, thanks so much. Keep on and give us a holler if you see any movement. We'll get straight back to you. Thank you for that.
There we are.
Interesting, the exit poll numbers on Scotland, but lots of health warnings there because we don't have as many areas that are counted as in the figures for the exit polls. It's a little bit trickier. But we are going to get a bit of a progress report on the evening from Kirsty Walk, who's at the BBC's.
When is your next GP appointment? A week on Tuesday, I think.
Hello there, and with me I have Angus Robertson, who is
Yeah, there we go.
the Scottish Government, and
More
the
money in
former
the kitty.
SNP Westminster leader, and Ian Murray, the MP for Edinburgh South so far, and the Shannon.
Week on Tuesday, I have a week off next week to chill.
That we have got on the exit poll 10 seats for the SNP, but we're not extrapolating out. The parties are extrapolating, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The BBC is not extrapolating. But first of all, Ian Murray, if this exit poll is any way true, we could be sitting with the new Secretary of State for Scotland.
Well, let's underline in bold if, but what we've seen over the last 6 weeks of this election campaign is a change in Labour Party, offering change to the public, and the public, I hope, have responded to that. If the exit poll turns
Labour talking about how brilliant they are.
It does chime with what we've seen in the other polls in recent days and in recent weeks. And therefore, that's the kind of thing we've been getting back on the doorstep. But
I'm sure there'll be other parties saying the same about themselves shortly.
Seats, of course, were very, very big SNP majorities, and therefore they could all be very, very tight indeed. And look, we're coming from the worst election results since 1935, and therefore the hill is steep to climb. And it looks as if we're climbing some of it tonight, but let's not get too carried away this early in the night.
This is a very Starmer-esque reaction. No whooping, no jumping up and down.
Well, you know, we've always been confident but not complacent. We won't be complacent until such times as all those votes are counted and they're in the bag.
Angus Robertson, there's no extrapolation.
Yeah, I've got a home blood pressure monitor.
And you have gone, if
It's not giving me great results.
35 seats. Now, the former leader of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, tonight says this is the grimmer
Evening,
end
Stu.
of expectations.
Well,
Exit poll to be
I haven't heard whether Andrew Nolan's won a seat or not yet. Still waiting for that news, Stu.
Disappointed, and congratulations to Ian and colleagues. I think it's in line with recent polls over recent weeks that was predicting a Labour victory both at a UK level but also in Scotland. And of course, I'm disappointed. I was the leader of the SNP in the House of Commons for 10 years, so that's a lot of my colleagues.
Even in deep fried deals?
Looks like will not be holding their seats. And that is obviously disappointing, but I will agree with Ian. I think it's important. I think the public has just been so sick of Conservative.
Link is in the chat if anyone wants to come live and watch the results come in.
Keir Starmer for change. I think that has resonated, and I think
Scottish doorsteps,
and on the Scottish doorsteps as well.
With the idea of soft SNP supporters vote for Labour to get the Conservatives out. However, it could just be a straightforward verdict on actually what the SNP has been doing in government in Scotland, because after all, you've been there since 2007. That's a very long time, and people, by and large, the support for independence is kind of sticking where it often is, in the late 40s. but actually maybe they just feel that the SNP hasn't delivered for them.
Well, if it was as simple as that, the SNP would be getting nearly 50% of the vote. It's not the way that Scottish politics work. This was a UK election where people had the opportunity of kicking out Rishi Sunak, getting rid of the Boris Johnson nightmare, getting rid of the Liz Truss government and the record
Ed Balls,
of
yeah.
incompetence.
I think he was in a meeting the other
change
week.
Message chimed. We know that's a very powerful
With the
message.
department,
And I
but
think voters in Scotland
I
decided
didn't join it.
in the UK election to vote to change a UK government, and the Labour Party managed to land the message that they were the principal vehicle to do that.
But this exit poll isn't anyway right, and you are in government with an extremely comfortable majority. It still means that you're going to have to deliver for Scotland in the next 2 years, because there's Scottish parliamentary elections in 2 years' time. And some of the things, and we will interrogate this later, that you've promised and offered may not be possible, because obviously there's fiscal rules to follow. You're not going to have the money to do stuff.
Well, the work will start on that first thing.
I bought my photo ID with me.
Morning, if we're lucky enough.
I only got to the polling station about an hour before it shut, but I made it.
It's important, particularly for viewers across the whole of the UK, to realise that people in Scotland were demanding change, but they were demanding change from 14 years of the Tories and 17 years of the SNP. It was about NHS and the huge waiting lists in Scotland. It was about the state of the Scottish economy. Yes, a lot of that was to blame on the Tories and 14 years of incompetence and chaos at Westminster, but 17 years of failure in Scotland. And if the SNP take from this message that the voters are wrong, they might end up in an even worse position coming to the Scottish elections in 2026.
Angus Robertson, Murray, thank you very much indeed.
Kirsty,
Over to you now.
Kirsty, quick question. I mean, it is an exit poll, and it's even trickier predicting these things early on in Scotland. But if the numbers are anywhere near where they are now, where does that leave the SNP and potentially pushing for a second independence referendum?
First of all, there is no extrapolation in Scotland. The SNP 10 is disputed in here, but actually, just say it is 10. It certainly sets the cause of independence back, but you've also got these Scottish elections for Scottish Parliament. People vote in different ways. This could be it could, as Angus Robertson said, be a protest vote against the Conservative government. It could, as Ian Murray says, be a verdict on what the SNP's record in devolved things like the NHS, like education is. So actually, it's a much more complex Rubik's Cube in Scotland. It's not just one.
Still, nobody has fallen over with a ballot box in the hand. I'm disappointed.
Okay, Kirsty, thank you.
Wait for somebody to go flying.
The numbers, whether they really believe the poll. But tonight there will be no arguing with Jeremy Vine's numbers. He's in Cardiff for the night, and we are going to cross to him now. Jeremy, let's see what you've got.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, welcome to the headquarters of BBC Wales, and you can see this map here. You see
Jeremy Vine is in
areas,
Cardiff.
Tory seats and the most marginal ones we put first. So we've got a board. Let's call it a battle board, and each tab is a seat, and there are 50.
Obviously not Jon Snow anymore. Then it must be Jeremy Vine.
The most marginal of all the Conservatives going into this election. Burnley with a 127 majority last time. Then Leon Atherton, new seat. 293 majority, really slender majorities, high peak 590, and then you've got the twin seats of Bury South, Bury North, etc. As we go down the boards, the seats gradually get better defended, and the Conservatives have a better chance of keeping them. Now let's show you what the exit poll is telling us. The results we put up, of course, are not results yet. They are going to flash because they're just predictions. But you can see this board, most of the blue has been washed
I think he's got brown shoes on.
Except for, interestingly, listening to Kirsty there, the Scottish seats.
Hello, John.
The Conservatives are defending their Scottish seats better than anywhere else. But it's a wash of red.
Was Tony Blair the last Labour leader? Nope.
As the opposition parties are just ripping through this first Tory board. So these seats.
He went
changing
a
hands.
long
All
time
the ones
ago.
Except Scotland and Carshalton, Wimbledon, the top two Lib Dem targets, by the way. Okay, let's move on. Let's do the next 50 Tory seats. And again, you can see what's happened. Let's have a look. We move it on. You see what's happened here. So seats 50 to 100, 51 to 100. Hendon goes, Truro goes, Wrexham goes, Hazelgrove.
Oh, Wrexham's going back to Labour.
In Giffiddin. Dumfriesshire again stays Conservative. They're somehow defending their Scottish seats. But look at the damage here. We still haven't seen, until we get to Exmouth, a seat outside Scotland that the Conservatives have managed to defend successfully in their first 100. Finchley This is Thatcher's old seat. Goes Lib Dem. Let's look at the next board. Again, the map on the floor changes as I bring them on. That's a peachy Lib Dem target, Sutton and Cheam, so they've taken that under our exit poll prediction. Woking, they take Brecon, Eastleigh. It's a phenomenal night for the Liberal Democrats when you think last time they barely had a dozen seats. But look at the red going down the board. The Tories are not.
Looks like the Lib Dems are going to be doing well.
At this point, it was still in the first 150 Conservative seats. The colours on the map are changing. Let's have a look at seats 151 to 200. Where will the Conservatives start to mount a defence in England? Again, Telford Labour, South Devon Lib Dem. Let's have a look. Froome and East Sussex Lib Dem. Lib Dem's doing brilliantly. Labour doing brilliantly. Beaconsfield, there we are. The Conservatives seem to have defended Beaconsfield, but that's heartland Conservative country. Bassett Law reform from the Conservatives. Tunbridge Wells, Bicester, Chelmsford. You're starting to see the Conservatives defend a seat here and there, but this is around about 180th, 190th target seats. Welling, Hatfield, Grant Shapps. Looks as though that one's gone under our prediction as well.
So it's looking like an absolute slaughter.
201 to 250.
If the exit polls are right.
Even seats that are 200 down the target list, Labour are taking. Rochester and Stroud, Isle of Wight West. Yes, some are being defended. Melstride back in central Devon, says our prediction. But look, they're taking Lowestoft. Gravesham is interesting. 199th on Labour's target.
Right, I'm going to get some snacks out for this.
As a Labour gain. Kettering, Mansfield, Wellingborough. Labour gain still in the majority on this board. You're seeing the Conservatives can't defend their own seats until you get to seat 251. Right. So we're way down. We're in safe forward territory now.
I have got some tortilla chips. And I did have some sauce in my phone. Where have I put the sauce?
Call of disasters. You see the names of all those constituencies spin through. We'll be back with Jeremy throughout the night.
Right, here we go. Time for some chips and dip. Wonder if Dame Diana Joseph got him.
Of Conservative candidates, thousands of volunteers, and millions of
I can't open this.
For your hard work.
It's hard to get a knife.
Has begun to have his say. To everyone who's campaigned for Labour in this election, to everyone who voted for us and put their trust in our changed Labour Party, one of his favourite phrases, thank you. So neither man either conceding or claiming victory at this stage of the night. You wouldn't expect them to do any less, but they both are there with a message to their supporters. When eventually we get their accounts at various times through the night, we'll hear from them directly on the stage.
Their count's likely to be later on in the evening. We're looking for the first count.
We are.
We need the first count. And we're hoping that it's going to be one of these counts. MAGA.
Sunderland versus Blythe.
Sally, who is joining us as well from Sunderland South. Now, first of all, how's it looking there?
Hey, evening. It's looking really, really busy. A record.
Okay. It's time to get stuck in.
It's a more streamlined operation here. I will say.
Detroit Rich is remaining. Was that your vote the decisive one, Stu?
Accuracy is key, not speed. I know you've seen the pictures of outside this leisure centre here in Blythe of cars coming in and people running in with boxes, but this is a really, really streamlined operation. Teams counting.
Wrexham's MP looks like to be going.
The first constituency, there are 4 here
Blythe and Ashington. So that will be the first to be declared. And about 15 minutes ago, we were told that expect that in around an hour. But you know, a little bit vaguer because the expectation is that could come in at around 11:30. But it may be sooner, you never know. I know we're all waiting for the first results.
Hey, well, Wing Clacton.
Here, all new because of boundary changes. Blythe and Ashington, Cramlington and Killingworth, Hexham and Northumberland North. So the secret, what is the secret apart from the running that you are seeing? Well, the secret is lots of people, very little downtime to keep the operation streamlined, but accuracy is key. I've also managed to steal off one of the tables. I don't know if you can see, you might be able to see on the tables, a little thimble because I'm seeing the lightweight paper that's being used. That is very much part of the key as well. I'll tell you a little story. The man who masterminded this operation in 2019 was Bill Crawford, and he'd been poached from Sunderland, where Sally is obviously, and he worked at Newcastle in previous years. And now his son, Mark Crawford, is masterminding the operation here. So we'll see if success comes through the generation. Just remember, in 2019,
I reckon Blythe are going to win.
Because there was one bundle that needed to be recounted. Everyone here hoping that won't be the case in 2024.
Naga, thank you. We're going to go over to where the head honcho was poached, nicked, in order to try to get the first count.
Nobody likes onion rings.
And Sunderland South. Sally, first of all, they're convinced they're going to be first there. But secondly, how are the Labour team there feeling about the night so far?
Do you know what, Clive? At the moment, they're in such a huddle. They're keeping things very, very, very low key. So they're not saying a lot. But I can tell you, I have to give a very special mention to the sixth formers of St Aidan's and St Anthony's Catholic High Schools before I talk about anyone else. Because they are the kids that you have seen on your screens running these boxes in for the last half hour.
Oh, they've got child labour running the boxes.
Training. There is a human chain from the car park up the steps to the back door here, and then we see a sixth former running. So these are
Nothing like child labour getting involved.
Maybe not old enough to vote yet, but definitely playing their part here on election night. And I know here at the moment we are perhaps the underdogs when it comes to timing. We are perhaps expecting to come in second, but I can tell you we have a secret weapon in this room. Here in this room is Jackie, one of the bank tellers from the original super fast counts all those years ago. She's brought back the 18, and they are at the back of this room now, counting right now, and I can tell you they are confident. Jackie told me they're going to win.
Well, it could be down to Jackie.
What do we reckon? Blythe or Sunderland's going to be first? I'm backing Blythe. Yeah, child labour.
It's great to see you both. Thank you. I was actually one of those. Sally was talking about those kids who were helping with boxing. I was one of those.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I've been bowling. Lancashire.
Well, there you go. Well, I hope you've been in a good shift. Well, we've seen
A long time.
St Aidan.
Peter Mandelson's impressed by that.
Well, St Aidan has to salute you, and those two aren't normally up this late, so we'll be going straight back to them when there is actually a result. As the night goes on, so much is going to come in. One of the things that will come in, Steve Baker, is your own result. You need to let them head on to that count shortly. But before you go, you were diplomatically saying you were sure that Rishi Sunak would do the right thing by the party.
No, by the country.
And by the, well, I just want to be clear. What did you mean by that? Do you mean he's going to have to resign?
Well, so I think obviously this is an extremely difficult moment for the Conservative Party. Clearly, he'll be handing power over to Keir Starmer. But how he...
Excuse me.
Extremely he just had a torrid time, a dreadful result. There will be undoubtedly...
I think Sunderland did it last time, if I remember correctly. I may not.
We'll go through a grieving process. Then we'll have to...
Blythe came second, I think, because I think it was a recount. Could be wrong now. Like 5 years ago, wasn't it? Do you think Trump will win Biden? I was very surprised when I went to vote today to see either Trump or Biden on the ballot paper. I thought that's who we were voting for.
I believe his heart and his mind will be set on what is right for the country, and part of what is right for the country, and your viewers may not like it, but it's having a functioning Conservative Party, and I'm sure he will.
And as part of this determination, so I just wonder, do you feel that the Conservative Party listened too much to people like you on the right, have been a strong Eurosceptic, or do you believe that actually the wrong thing was to bring in lockdowns, to allow the state to grow, to allow the tax burden to rise to its highest ever level? What's your view on that?
I think that there's a great deal at stake. One thing is events plus technology. The combination of WhatsApp is completely different to
I'm Team Live.
Only really since about 20.
Don't like this child labour.
If we all end up on WhatsApp, it's produced an enormous acceleration in the public debate. And COVID obviously has had a profound impact on people. Brexit doesn't explain what's happening in the United States or Canada. Personally, I think that what's happened for 50 years is that Western states have been living far beyond their means and ultimately paying for it with cheap money. And that has created a sense of injustice in the world not working.
But hang on, do you think that it looks like you're going to get smashed tonight because you were too much to the left or too much to the right?
In the end, I don't think we will be able to have those sort of abstract conversations. We've got some practical things to do about what kind
It's
of
interesting now.
the Conservative Party want to be.
France looks like the far right is going to take over.
It seems to me that the old idea of being
America
an absolute monarchy
may well be Trump.
now belongs to
But here we've got Labour.
and very practical policies which can make, for example, the health service work. If we can be proud of our education record. But it's very interesting that Labour returned to the idea of using the private sector to get waiting lists down. I said it before, I'm sure I'll say it again. I wish the Labour Party had been able to say that consistently since 2010, because it would have created the space for us to do it, and maybe everyone's health would be in a better place. So, all of these things are big factors, and it's going to take quite a while to work through them. But I suppose what I would do is make a plea to all Conservatives at whatever level, whether elected to Parliament or formally, to just think extremely carefully about what they say in public. Now is the moment when we start.
There is an irony that on the night of the election in the UK, we're talking about the American presidential election.
Learn to air our differences privately and work through them in a spirit of goodwill.
Yeah, but Steve, you're quoted as saying you make a good leader because you've been nominated to lead Tory rebellions by your colleagues 4 times over the past decade. Brexit, COVID lockdowns, net zero, and so on. Divided parties. Don't we know that?
Well, yes, Clive, that is true. But
so you're part of the problem. Potentially.
This is going to be a conversation. I may well have lost my seat in a few hours. That, as you've articulated, is what is expected.
That's the 1%.
I'm expecting to be swept away in a few hours, and I shall think that many of your viewers watching this will be cheering. But it is just a matter of fact that my colleagues asked me to sort out Conservatives for Britain before the referendum. I was asked to sort out actually a unifying project, a European research group afterwards, which of course went south. COVID, again, was asked to do it. What would have happened if we hadn't given
fruit
voice
juice
to those people who thought it was extraordinary to be locked down at home? I think it would have provoked massive conspiracy theories if no one had been willing to give voice to that. And I'm proud that I did.
Well, Alison, quick question about
who do we reckon's going to lose their seat then? What big scalps are going to go?
Indeed, that's how the thing progresses. The reality for an incoming Labour government is going to be quite an inheritance, isn't it? Whether it be the tax burden, the challenges that public services face, a lot of things that can't be magicked away by a big majority. And I guess there's a challenge for an incoming government with a big majority that is weighted with expectation. And that then confronts a reality that is going to be difficult to shift quickly.
If I look back over my whole life and before,
But Mandelson's back again.
I cannot identify a worse financial.
Knowles will go, Braverman may go. Obviously, I can't offer any comments on any ministers' performances.
The legacy that the 45 government inherited,
or former ministers.
The failures of the Conservative Party, due to the fact that they fought and won the World War. You cannot say the same about this legacy. This legacy has been brought to us, yes, by courtesy of COVID and the Ukraine war that had such an impact on energy prices. People are blaming hold on, let me make my point. And blown many holes in our finances.
But then we have also brought this upon ourselves. We brought it upon ourselves with Brexit, not just the act of Brexit, but many years of divisions and indecision over how we were going to implement it. Then the moral collapse of Boris Johnson and Partygate and his lies to Parliament that shattered international confidence in our country, and then to crown it all, the calamitous Liz Truss and her crashing of the economy as a result of her mini budget.
Anderson is not holding back.
We had an incredible deficit, and that means that whilst there are early, important first steps that can be taken to put things right, turning the whole picture around is going to take years. And I think that Keir Starmer was absolutely right to be sober and honest and responsible in what he said to the British public during this campaign, and I would expect him to continue to do so.
Okay, well, Madison, thanks very much, Steve Baker. We have to let you get off to your candidate.
I'd love to
Trying to
miss
leap
my
out of the
chance
seat.
to rebut that.
She knew you stayed in Greece. You were off a day at
I
the
did
start
all
of
the
the
work
summer.
I needed to in Greece.
All
I
right.
invite you to interview my chairman at my camp.
Okay,
All
we'll
right.
see how it pans out for you, but we're grateful to you for nobody coming to bat for the Conservatives in what is an extremely difficult night for the party. We'll let you get off to the count. Thanks for being with us this evening. And Peter Madison, you're staying with us for some time there. So let's be thinking about the numbers and a bit behind it.
Indeed, because we're having
Oh, Mandelson definitely thinks it's been a win.
chat based on an exit poll, and part of the responsibility for
Hello, Matt.
that exit poll is the result of the hard work of our election team and Professor Sir John Curtis, of course, who joins us now. John, there is so much to take away from this exit poll so far. Absolutely. What should we be focusing on? What do you believe is the figure or the element?
At least I'll tell the tips they're not lasting long.
The most relevant, important, but also potentially accurate.
Okay, the crucial thing, first of all, you need to realise is that this seat forecast is not just simply a consequence of
The Boffin is on
national
screen
shares
now.
that we expect the parties to gain, but rather how they are distributed and how that has moved decisively against the Conservatives. So, for example, support for the Conservatives is falling much more heavily in places where they are trying to defend a seat than it is in places that Labour already hold. But why is that happening? It's not because Labour are doing better in Conservative seats. It's because reform are. Much of the damage to the Conservative Party tonight is being done by reform, even if it is the Labour Party that proves to be the beneficiary. That point two, then, the second thing making life difficult for the Conservatives is where are Labour doing best? Well, they're doing better in places where they're starting off second to the Conservatives. Oh, and by the way, also places they also seem to do.
Did I see Pretty Patel spitting at him? No. No, see, I didn't even know that was a thing now. I haven't seen a spitting image since the 80s, maybe the 90s. So Labour are losing vote in Wales and gaining votes in Scotland.
So there are two things that flow from that. First, an obvious health warning. While we are pretty convinced that this pattern will exist by the end of the night, whether we've got it exactly right is much more uncertain. Whether we've slightly overestimated or underestimated these patterns could make quite a lot of difference to the seat outcome. The second thing that flows from this is that although this looks like an election in which Labour are going to get a landslide in terms of seats, it does not follow, I will repeat, it does not follow that this necessarily means that Labour have got a landslide in terms of votes. So that's point number one about the broad picture we're presenting this exit poll, the health warning that goes for the estimate, but also the implications for how we might end up interpreting this result at the end of the night. There are then two other things to say. The two figures that I think have probably
Often still going up.
most surprise, most discussion, perhaps most controversy, are one, reform at 13, and two, the SNP at 10. Those are the two figures about which we are least certain. Basically, what we have got in the exit poll is a lot of places where there is a small chance that reform will win the seat. But we're talking about 30% chance.
Hi, Vicky.
And the question, we add up these probabilities, and that's how we get to the figure of 13. be honest, the figure could end up being quite a lot less than that, or indeed rather more, just depending on how the cookie crumbles. I mean,
We've got Basildon on screen. Now, Basildon aren't going to win. I'm still backing Blythe. Blythe going to be first to declare. But our Sunderland are looking excited at the minute.
And we have just, even if we just underestimated the SNP performance relative to Labour by a little bit, then that SNP number will go up. So those are the health warnings. Of course, behind all of this, it does look as though, yep, Sir Keir Starmer is going to be the Prime Minister tomorrow. He's probably going to have a very substantial overall majority. And that, of course, is the crucial thing we're trying to find out. But there is still inevitably plenty of...
I wonder if Rishi has to hand over the keys to number 10 in person, like, you know, here you go, Keir. Here's the keys. Maybe there aren't any keys for number 10. There are keys for number 10.
It certainly is, John. He's given us the results. He's very careful about these early results. Even though, as you clearly explained, seat numbers might be very different from those smaller parties. That very significant suggestion that Reform might be on 13 seats, and that equally significant suggestion in the other way that the SNP might crash to 10. You've been very clear that those numbers might change. However, are you telling us tonight that the exit polls suggest that those broad movements of voters, massively up for Reform and massively down for the SNP, are there, even if they don't translate into seats?
Yes, and inevitably, well,
so they reckon Reform have got a lot of votes. Front door doesn't have a lock. So I think Conservatives will pull out the bag. Hello, Simon, how are you?
It's a question of how that translates into seats, and that's much more difficult to estimate. In the case of the SNP, you know, because we have fewer sampling points,
I can't obviously comment on anything that would impact my impartiality.
That said, we're pretty confident that the Labour Party is going to end up with most seats in Scotland. It's just exactly what is the gap between the two parties is going to prove to be. I thought it was interesting that Angus Robertson, at least on air, didn't seriously dispute that because it sounds as though the SNP...
Rishi's got to have some keys for something in number 10, hasn't he? It can't just be, you know, when he goes to bed at night, he can't be leaving the door unlocked, surely. Yeah, I like a live watch along. Normally when the pubs do a live watch along with Ray.
And I was going to say that. That's exactly why you have to stay up all night with us, with John. Very significant point there.
Do you know why the 0 on the number 10 is? I've never looked at it, Chris. The closest I've got to getting to number 10 is asking for directions from the police at the door. They're trying to get into Cabinet Office.
But the front pages, they're telling their own story, even from the exit poll. Look, the Daily Mail. Labour set for historic landslide there.
Looks like
we've got
Daily Mail are already calling for Labour.
Red. Exit poll gives Labour huge 170 seat majority there. So the Sun actually sort of coming out and endorsing.
Welcome, Mr. Barrister.
Yesterday, the Daily Telegraph is also suggesting on its front page that it's going to be a Labour landslide. So the front pages.
There's more of the child Labour running at Blythe now. I've just seen them.
For some reason, they weren't firing, but all the newspapers so far, their front pages predicting a Labour landslide indeed.
So the 0 looks straight from the gate. Did not know that.
From the Liberal Democrats, Deputy Leader. Hello, it's good to see Andrea Leadsom as well, standing down in South Northamptonshire. But it's good to have you both. And Wes Streeting from Labour with us too. Daisy Cooper, first of all, the exit poll is suggesting that you're going to be at 53 seats. So falling off pedalos, cycling, you know, at great speed down hills in Wales, swimming in sewage. That all makes sense. It worked.
Anyone here have a you know,
for a once in a century result for the Liberal Democrats, and
a famous politician as their
and our positive vision and our plans for how we
MP.
want to save the NHS and fix social care.
So those antics got you the airtime with Ed Davey doing all this. It's got you the airtime and got you a voice when it came to trying to get your message out.
Right.
It worked. And the fact of the matter is, we've said time and again that whilst we don't take ourselves that seriously, we do take our politics very seriously.
We've got
and every single one of those stuff. There was a very serious
Someone in
about
a
our plans to, end
pink blazer on the TV now. Don't know who she is.
We talked about the NHS and social care week after week after week, and many of those stuff have helped us to do that.
Right. I've eaten half a bag of crisps. I need to, there's a long night ahead of me yet. My granddad was a stand for Parliament in the 1950s, but he didn't want to. You see, he could have been a Prime Minister's granddaughter.
Benefited greatly from the Tories crashing down to earth. But actually, our numbers so far don't suggest that all those pedalos and kayaks and water slides made a big difference in persuading voters actively to go to you.
Well, look, we've got a first past the post voting system in this country. It's a broken system, but it's a system.
Oh, here we go now. We've got a broken system now.
And we learn how to play it now. That's what's happened this time. You've learned how to play the first past the post system.
Well, that's it. And whilst we want to
So that is what's happened, right? You've learned to play the game better.
Well, we've been clear for years now that our goal was always to try and unseat as many Conservative
John Glenn,
MPs
not
as
come
possible.
across him.
Up until this evening, we said we were
So John Prescott, wasn't he from Prestatyn originally? Sure, he had a connection with Prestatyn. Let me have a look.
Every Liberal Democrat MP we have, however many there are, by the time the results are in, every single one of them will be a local champion.
Yeah, John Prescott was born in Prestatyn. There you go. Just Google it.
Voting is critical for every political party, and it is in every single election.
You taught John Sims' niece, as in the actor. You got George Galloway.
There will always be other people who want to vote tactically, and there's no doubt that in those areas where Liberal Democrats have been the key challengers to the Conservatives, we did ask some people to vote tactically for us, as well as to vote positively for our vision on the NHS and social care.
Right, well, let's show you our cameras right around the country. We are at every.
We can't be far away from the.
See all the amazing pictures there.
Yeah.
Hard at work, and it should
Also, the Master in Doctor Who.
Blythe Valley is looking promising, so Sally and Naga will be fighting it out. But Rita, let's turn to you. You've got some analysis of where things have really gone wrong, according to the exit poll for the Tory vote.
Absolutely, Laura, but there's some interesting stuff about the Labour vote as well, actually. So what you can see here is some analysis based on the exit poll and what has happened to the
exit poll analysis is on screen now.
In 2019 for the Conservatives versus seats that voted Labour. Let's take a look at the Conservative seats first. So you can see the Conservative vote has plummeted here, down 28% in those seats that voted Conservative 5 years ago. Labour up by 5%, Lib Dems and Green up as well. But the big winners here are the Reform Party.
It's a big swing to Reform by looks of it.
The Brexit Party got last time round, 18%. So that has really, one can only assume that has really hurt the Conservatives there. And that is what senior Conservative figures have been warning about in the last few weeks. Now, let's take a look at the seats that went Labour 5 years ago. And here you can see again a big drop in Conservative support. But this is the really interesting thing, that Labour has gone back a little bit in its own seats, down by 1 percentage point. And who are the winners? It's Reform and the Greens. So it looks as if the vote from the two big parties has actually been redistributed amongst Reform and Greens. So I just wonder what, Wes Streeting, I think you're there, wondering what you think of this Labour vote down.
I wonder what the election after this one will look like. It's already looking interesting.
What the results actually come through and say, but
he delivered the blood scandal comp scheme. I see.
And we knew that it wasn't good enough just to stack up more votes and seats we already hold. We needed to win seats from the Conservatives. And gone are the days where Labour Party leaders make excuses for poor results. And
You went to school with John Spencer's daughters, not Frank Spencer then.
It was just benevolence that led to Theresa May going back into Downing Street because we didn't want a forced eviction on our hands. You know, we lost in 2017, we lost in 2019, we lost in 2015 and 2010 for that matter. We are in this position today to be able to win a general election because the Labour Party has fundamentally changed. We understood why we lost in 2019, listened, I mean genuinely listened, as to why we lost support from people we should have never broken faith with. And as well as rebuilding trust with those voters, we also
Wonder what Liz Truss is doing now.
That enabled millions of disaffected Conservative voters to look at Labour and think, well, I might vote for these guys.
I don't know, is she even still an MP? I have no clue.
this is a remarkable exit poll. They're not results, it's an exit
Let's
poll.
have a look.
In 2019, we were on the brink of extinction and told that in order to get a majority of one, we would need a 1997 style swing. This exit poll shows a 1997 style majority. So, I'll believe it when I see it. But this is a remarkable exit poll and a testament to the change that Keir Starmer has led in the Labour Party. I don't think Sky's had nearly enough credit for the steel, the determination that he has shown to really grab the Labour Party by the scruff as it
Wes, I wonder if I can
force it to learn why we lost.
I wonder if I can just jump in. I mean, nobody's taking away from you the things that you are saying again based on the exit poll, but these figures do suggest not a resounding enthusiasm for the party in those seats that voted for you 5 years ago.
We'll wait and see what the results said, but I think I've said on the BBC before, I think it was on another election night, that Keir Starmer could literally be on his way to Buckingham Palace to be made Prime Minister, and pundits would be saying, oh, it's still a disappointing night for Labour. I mean, come on, give me a break. I've had enough of this now after 4 years. 4 years ago, I don't mind saying, I would never have imagined that Labour could do this in one term. Never have imagined it. I thought it was impossible. I thought at best a two-term project. And yes, the implosion of the Conservatives and the SNP.
Talking about Labour's turnaround being impossible.
The only reason we've got sails on the ship and the ship is ship-shaped.
Hello, Geordie Reseller.
Took the vessel from the shipwreck in 2019, rebuilt it, and made it ship shape and seaworthy again.
And Wes, just as you've been speaking there, Wes Streeting, you seem to have a little bit of a flicker of a bit more excitement about what happened rather than your early message of, oh, this is an exit poll. Are you ready to say you're sure you've won?
Well, I used to watch the 97 results back and thought that the Labour spokespeople who were on then sounded kind of crackers, really.
Who's talking is the Shadow Health Secretary. Wes Streeting, is it?
I know exactly how they felt. But honestly, it sort of looks and feels too good to be true. We will judge the results by the results and not the exit poll.
There's a quote for you. We'll judge the results by the results.
I've seen many exit polls over the years. They don't tend to look like these ones. And if we have won this general election, that is historic for the Labour Party, but even more importantly, it's an opportunity for the country for us to rebuild our economy, rebuild our public services, and rebuild trust in politics.
Thanks for now. Daisy Cooper, I think you have to go in just a few minutes, so thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've talked a little bit about the projections for reform, seemingly
Come on, Blythe.
significant result for them, according to the exit poll, getting 13 seats. Their deputy leader, Ben Habib, has just tweeted,
And slightly
huge bridgehead. This is
Ben for Labour. That seems to be what the prediction is.
We can show it to you. This is the beginning of the fight back for the nation state of the United Kingdom. So a very forthright and victorious message from the Reform UK Deputy Leader, Ben Habib. Let's find out then what the mood is like in the Reform camp. That's given us a taste of it. Our colleague Alex Forsyth is in Clacton, where, of course, the leader of the party, only lately rejoining in that role, Nigel Farage, is hoping at the 8th time of asking to be headed to Westminster himself. Alex, what is the mood there?
Remarkably calm at the moment, Laura, if I'm perfectly honest with you, but it is very early in the evening, and I suspect the mood within Reform UK more widely is less calm, having seen that exit poll. One of my colleagues tells me that Nigel Farage is having a meal somewhere in town. We're not expecting him to turn up until the early hours of the morning, because that's around the time that we're expecting a declaration here in Clacton.
Nope,
like you said,
I've had a sow.
Nigel Farage has attempted to get a seat in Westminster 7 times before and failed. And I suspect with all of the caveats around the exit poll, particularly when it comes to smaller parties like Reform UK, it would have really just given a huge confidence boost right the way through what was already a pretty confident Reform UK campaign. So I think a little bit later, we're going to go from calm counting to something potentially more chaotic. And I suspect the mood within Reform UK right now is pretty confident.
So there is confidence then that Nigel Farage is going to take that seat.
Well, I think this is his best chance, many people think, because of the wider political picture that he's had in the 7 times of standing. But you have to remember that in the previous parties,
Saying that Farage might actually become an MP.
In 2015, they had a high vote share. They polled 4 million votes, but that translated to only 1 win in terms of seats. And the seat that they won then, this one, in Clapton with the former MP Douglas Carswell, who had, of course, defected from the Conservatives, triggered a by-election, won it as UKIP, and then retained it at the 2015 general election. So when you take all of that into account, and the fact that Clapton has been at the centre of Nigel Farage's campaign for the past few
More ballot
weeks,
boxes arriving at Blythe.
rallies out in the town, making himself
The child Labour is running them into the building again.
It's the best chance for Nigel Farage to get what has proved elusive for him so far.
But it looks like Sunderland are warming up.
Westminster, but of course, for the party more widely, Reform UK, what will be really important is, yes, how many seats they get, but also the impact that party has in terms of the number of votes it gets, and what that might mean for the Conservatives, the damage potentially that Reform UK does right across the country, as well as any seats they win themselves.
Alex, thank you so much. It could be much worse than any of the Conservatives had imagined, but we'll see how it develops.
Yeah, now if you're out and about, what are you doing? You should be at home watching us. But if you are out and about and you happen to be in central London, around Oxford Circus, and you go past the glorious building of the BBC, you will see there the results of the exit poll. Now remember, this is a first indication of what we think will happen tonight. We still haven't had a single result yet, but the Conservatives down to 131 seats. Labour, we are suggesting with the exit poll will be on 170 seats going up. Liberal Democrats on 61, Reform Party on 13 there. So potentially a good night for them, but this is only an exit poll. The SNP down to 10 as well. So a Labour landslide is the suggestion. Plaid Cymru on 4, so they're up slightly. And we go through the figures there with the Greens only making 1 gain according to the exit poll. So these, as I say, still figures that have to be confirmed.
I think
result, and we still haven't got
one thing we can say for definite, we're not having a Green Party government.
We might have our first result of the evening very shortly. But Andrea Leadsom, Conservative former Cabinet Minister and MP who's been standing down, thanks for coming in tonight. If Labour ends up with a majority of 170 as the poll predicts, and you end up crashing down by 241, the decision of Rishi Sunak to call the election now may prove to be one of the worst political mistakes in history, surely.
You know, according to the exit poll, this is a devastating night for the Conservatives. But I'd just like to reflect that it's actually a fantastic
the health minister is on now.
An election where, as Wes has said, in 2019, it was the Conservatives' night to have a huge majority, and it was potentially unassailable for 2 terms. And I think what this does show is that our democracy is alive and well. Devastating for my party, a clear need to rethink, to regroup, to regain the trust of the people. But at the same time, we do need to wait for some proper results and not just look at the exit poll. And I think, as John Curtis said earlier, there's quite a lot to be looked at in terms of how many votes were cast and what the impact is on tactical voting and, of course, voting for reform.
Andrea Leadsom, you're a very experienced politician. You're in the cabinet for a long time, doing lots of different jobs. You know that exit polls have a margin of error, of course, but they are pretty much near as, they're very, very good. They're showing a clear picture tonight, not just for Labour's success, which you seem to be, in a sense, praising for what they've achieved, that volatility of voters, but reform, Nigel Farage's outfit, looks like they have absolutely taken a hammer to your vote in lots of different parts of the country. Has Rishi Sunak handled them in the wrong way?
You know, it's never easy when you are the Prime Minister to decide when to call a general election. You know, we saw that with Gordon Brown back in 2010, where he was slated for not calling the general election, and we've had months and months and months of opposition politicians saying, call a general election. And when the Prime Minister decides to do it, of course,
and how much damage they've done to the Tories.
Reform, according to the exit poll, has done.
Who did I vote for?
Conservatives, but we will find out exactly how much so. But
that's not something I can discuss publicly, unfortunately.
It is a very, very difficult.
I have to remain impartial, as it's also.
And he will have taken into account the potential impact of.
So my vote will forever remain private.
The consequences of, you know, the economy turning a corner, the fact that
real wages are rising. There are all sorts of factors that he will have taken into account. So it's very easy, I think, always in hindsight to say, well, that was a really bad decision. But actually, I think these are very, very considered issues.
But implicit in Laura's question was the way that Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party handled reform. Hardly went after them in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the campaign. Only really getting stuck in after those dreadful comments, allegedly, from one of the supposed workers for Nigel Farage in Clacton.
Did you have a monster Raven pie? I don't think we did. I didn't really pay much attention to the ballot slip.
Who might be leaning for reform. That didn't work.
Yeah, Wrexham's on the screen.
Well, we'll see. But absolutely, I would accept that potentially in hindsight, you could have gone after reform much more. But the Conservatives actually have some very strong achievements to their name. And I think genuinely the desire was to highlight what the Conservatives in government have done. 4 million more people in work, low unemployment, real wages rising. We turned the corner. We got through the COVID pandemic. We're recovering fast. Equally joint first in the G7 in terms of growth last month. There's a lot, all of the net zero achievements and so on, plus what we considered was a very real concern about what Labour will do, as continues to be the case, a very real concern about what Labour will do with people's taxes. And so, yes, maybe it was wrong not to go after reform straight away. But again, all of these things are very carefully thought through as to what is the right approach. And what we wanted to do was to focus on what Labour would be doing with people's taxes.
I'm just going to cut in there because we've got a declaration.
Sunderland have won.
That the total number of votes for each candidate for the Horton and Sunderland South constituency is as follows. Richard Peter Bradley, 1,723. Chris Bernicle, 5,514. Paul Edgeworth, 2,290. Bridget Maeve Phillipson, 18,837.
I think that's a decisive victory for Labour in Sunderland South.
Sam Woods Grass, 11,668. The number of rejected ballot papers was 101.
Reform came second with more than double the votes the Conservatives got.
So it's allowed to Bridget Phillipson there, who can now expect not just to stay as the MP at Sunderland South, but who can expect to become the Education Secretary, having done that job as a shadow for Keir Starmer for the last few years. She receives more than 18,000 votes.
I'm going to go get my laptop charger.
Have beaten the Conservatives into second place. Let's listen in to Bridget Phillipson's victory speech. She's likely to be in the cabinet by the end of the weekend.
British people have spoken, and in Britain's call this evening is again a guide to results across our country, as it so often is. Then after 14 years, the British people have chosen change. They have chosen Labour, and they have chosen the leadership of Keir Starmer. Today, our country, with its proud history, has chosen a brighter future. The British people have decided that they believe, as Labour believes, that our best days lie ahead of us. Hope and unity.
There's a 3.4% swing from Labour to Reform in Sunderland South, but Labour have held it.
A government powered by hope.
A 51% turnout.
Tomorrow can not just be different from today, but better.
649 more seats to declare.
A government with purpose, above all to change our society for good. A government determined to build a Britain where background is no barrier, no matter who your parents are or where you are born. Determined to tear down the barriers to opportunity, which hold back too many of our children. That is Labour's purpose, and the result today speaks to the trust the British people have put in our changed Labour Party. And after 14 years, as your Labour MP, in opposition. I am so proud to be part of a party which has tonight not just won the trust of people here in Horton and Sunderland South, but of the people across Britain. Labour will honour the trust that you have placed in us. I will honour the trust that you have placed in me.
So she's declared victory for the whole Labour Party.
To deliver the promises that Labour has made and the better future that we, each of us and all of us, deserve. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And lastly, I want to say thank you to all the people who've worked hard to organise and secure today's election and counted the votes this evening. You are the people who deliver our democracy, and we are grateful for your contribution.
Looks like Blythe are warming up now.
Here in Horton and Sunderland South for a good-tempered campaign. To my fantastic local Labour Party for your unwavering support, and to my wonderful agent, Les Scott. Thank you.
Those factor agents as well.
Delighted, beaming away, not just having won her seat, but expecting now to be in the cabinet. And in her speech, she said, the British people have decided Labour will return government to service of the people and create a country where background is no barrier. Bridget Phillips in there very decisively saying that Labour has won the general election. We'll discuss that a bit more in just a second.
Yeah, and Labour's vote increase there in line with our exit poll. And that's the first result.
She can go for a good sleep now, can't she?
I think she did it. I'm the first MP elected into the new parliament. Yeah. Let's talk to Jacob Rees-Mogg, who can join us from North Somerset.
No, Rees-Mogg's live.
Thank you for being with us. How would you sum up the evening, given the exit poll, given what looks like it could be a terrible night for the Conservatives?
Oh, well, you've said it, and it's clearly a terrible night for the Conservatives. We're down basically to about 130 seats from having a majority of 80. There's no way of describing this as anything other than a bad night for the Conservative Party.
Where did it go wrong?
Where did it go wrong? I think that there were issues with changing the leader, that I think we do have an increasingly presidential system, and that people vote for a prime minister rather than for an individual member of parliament. I know the strict constitutional position, but that voters expect the prime minister they have chosen to remain the prime minister, and for it to be the voters who decide when that person is changed rather than it being done by a small cabal. And I'm afraid I think the Conservative Party took its core vote for granted, which is why you see so many people who may have voted Conservative previously going off to reform.
So the original sin was getting rid of Boris Johnson.
I don't know.
Well, original sin is a very interesting theological question, which I'd be happy to discuss on another occasion.
Maybe not tonight, Jacob. Maybe not tonight.
Not tonight, no. On another occasion. Yes, I think that people do vote for a leader, and that new leaders actually need an election.
It's getting rid of Boris is the problem, apparently, according to Rees-Mogg.
His own mandate. The mandate is increasingly personal, and if you look at it, this is a very strong mandate for Keir Starmer. And actually, if that's the case, I would support in that, because we want good government for this country, whoever is in high office in the individual country.
The problem with criticising Rishi Sunak and a cabal, as you describe it, for having got rid of Boris Johnson, is that you
Hello,
spent
Ali.
a lot of time with Steve Baker, who was in this studio not so long ago, plotting to get rid of Theresa May. And that, she managed to stay in office just like your best
Boris Johnson then had a very quick election after he became Prime Minister to get his own mandate. Bingo.
But in terms of that legality,
Need your own mandate. The mandate is personal.
but that's exactly why Rishi Sunak called it an election, isn't it? I mean, do you think it would have been impossible for him to win because of the kind of politician he was? I'm not entirely clear about whether or not you think he should have called an election sooner in order to have that personal mandate, or that if you had lost the country because you got rid of Boris Johnson, because he was followed by Liz Truss, who you backed.
I think I think the fundamental problem is that in this election we were taking our base for granted, and that is always a problem. And our base is big enough to reform, and we have no divine right to votes. We need to win voters at every single election. And if you take your base for granted, if you don't manage to stop the votes coming over, if you don't manage to control migration, when that's what your voters are concerned about, your voters will look to other parties. So I think failing to deliver on conservative core principles did us a lot of harm.
Could there be a return of Boris Johnson in some regard? That if you think that removing him was the problem, might him coming back be part of the solution for the Tory party after this election?
You'll need to interview Boris and ask him what his plans are. I can't act as a spokesman for him. He's a very big and powerful figure. You can see from Nigel Farage's success, as far as one can tell from the exit polls, big figures in politics make a difference. Big charismatic figures. We are, in spite of the constitutional niceties.
God, he's just called Nigel charismatic now.
System of individual MPs taking on residents. We are nonetheless an increasingly presidential system, and a charismatic individual leader is very important, and Nigel seems to have shown that in this election.
Should Nigel Farage find a place in the Conservative Party then, perhaps? It's been a discussion among some of your colleagues in the run-up to this. You might have avoided disaster if you'd welcomed him in earlier or not.
Well, we are where we are, and the disaster doesn't seem to have been averted. Again, we'll have to ask Nigel what
I have got
his plans are.
cheese tortillas with dips, chips and dips.
Interesting to see whether he can achieve that.
Do you think that you
Clive have really let me down here.
before we let you go, Jacob Rees-Mogg?
I know, but look, I see what you've said about it on your programme earlier. I will wait and see that the votes are being counted, or at least verified while we speak, and we will know in the early hours. So, as the Earl of Oxford Asquith used to say, wait and see.
You must have an inkling, though. I wonder just what's on your mind tonight. I think behind you there's perhaps a picture of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher looking on. Maybe I'm incorrect, but I think he's looking, spying that. Is that who they are? What do you think?
You're quite right. So there is.
I recognise Mrs. Thatcher's head in there, even from this distance.
Excellent.
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg will
Excellent.
let
But
you.
now I have no inkling at this stage, other than your exit poll.
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and of course we'll bring everybody watching the results from his count much later on in the evening.
Can I give a right eye wink if Farage is my favourite?
It is an unknowable.
I don't
question
believe
at
there
this
was a
point, isn't it?
reform
I
candidate
do
standing
agree
in
with what
Wrexham.
Jacob just said,
Not
that
sure,
we are becoming
but I don't think it was.
increasingly presidential, and I do think that is a challenge for Keir Starmer. He is not a presidential big character.
What's my favourite
He's
dip?
obviously done incredibly well.
Onion-free
so you can't
salsa.
take that away from him at all. But I do think that the shine wears off very, very quickly. And actually, as I said at the start of the interview, we do see change much more quickly now. It's fantastic that we have an alive and kicking democracy in this country, but people do need to look to the very quick turnaround. And, you know, where Sir Keir is concerned, we had the issues with Sue Gray, who did for Boris, arguably, the permanent secretary, who wrote the Boris Partygate report, did for him. Next thing we know, she's Keir Starmer's chief of staff. These are all things that come into the mix, and people will be putting a spotlight on those in the weeks and years to come.
We're keen to get counts around the country, but I have to bring in West Street.
No, it's Sue Gray's fault.
Dave Andrew is making that count.
No offence, Andrew, but I think the suitcase is full of wine did for Boris Johnson. I think the vomit on the carpet in number 10 did for Boris Johnson. I think the habitual lying did it for Boris Johnson. And then you guys made the mistake of calling in Liz Truss the spectacularly worst Prime Minister in modern British political history. Then crown this other guy to come in, Rishi Sunak, who was meant to clear up the mess. And you didn't, it's the worst thing you could do to a leader. You didn't back him, you didn't sack him. He was too weak to lead the Conservative Party. You've got the foxes in the hen house of the Braverman wing of the Conservative Party, who actually kind of, provisional wing of reforming the Conservative Party. And what were the One Nation Tories doing? Plotting in the corner, saying, oh, don't worry, after the election, we'll sort it out. I'm afraid that the reason why the Conservative Party is being swept out is because it's been a clown show and people are paying a heavy price for it. The reason the Labour Party is in a position to win is because we've changed, and we didn't choose the unity of the graveyard either after 2019. We had some fights and some arguments to reconnect the Labour Party with the people we lost and the people we needed to win over to form a majority. But the Conservative Party, I actually don't care about the Conservative Party. Their problem, not mine. We've got to clean up the mess of the Conservative Party, just like the Downing Street cleaners. We had to clean the bonnet up after Boris Johnson.
I feel like you two are just starting to warm up. More from you shortly.
And it's a long night, so we're all looking forward to it. We're going to go to Dashi then, who is in Hazelmere, which I think is going to be the count for Godalming and Ash, and their Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. How's it looking there?
Jeremy Hunt might be out.
Indeed, Clive. Yes, good evening from the Surrey Hills. Then no strangers to drama here, but the locations of filming of Harry Potter films and James Bond films. But that's nothing
Some more
compared to
fruit
what
juice is
they
required.
filmed here, because it's fair to say that Jeremy Hunt's team will brace a pretty tricky night. But that exit poll suggesting that he may well be the first candidate in modern time to lose the seat with just a 19% chance of hanging on to it, and there's some pretty devastating faces in his camp. Any chance I will tell you, realise it's not a spreadsheet, but Jeremy Hunt has been hoping to start a national plan on personal votes. So even though people are campaigning about the economy, so many people don't feel it, even though the numbers say they're moving in the right direction. So when the numbers came out suggesting inflation hit target once again, he was actually here, focusing on local issues, pounding the streets, things like the NHS sewage. He's been focusing on that, but so too has his Lib Dem rival Paul Follows, also a local lad and a councillor as well.
Oh, dear me.
However, should favour the Conservatives, and the fact that there are more candidates standing, the Lib Dems accept that it's quite difficult sometimes to get actual voters on their mind on the doorstep. Having said all that, of course, they know the spotlight's on here, so they've got open town convention, they're going to count Godalming and Ash first. So that means we may get a result around 3:30, 4 o'clock. In the meantime, the acting...
I'm not staying up until Jeremy Hunt comes in.
People going by handing out his favourite snack. Phil Tom, hoping to keep energy levels up. We'll see if that works. In the meantime, there's been plenty to over here. It could be one of the key dramas of the night.
Bill Tom. Plenty to chew over, and it sticks in your teeth as well.
I did allow her and then you to do an amazing pun.
This is true. This is true. No sitting chancellor has ever lost their seat.
Well, it's tomorrow night, so I'm not sure if I'll be awake tomorrow night. To be honest, Chris.
One of the huge headlines tonight, as would the fate potentially of Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative leader, who has been an MP for a long, long time, as well as a cabinet minister in all sorts of different jobs on the outskirts of East London. Let's check in with Emma Simpson, who's at his camp in Chingford. Emma, what's the sense from the Conservative camp there?
BBC must have just called every reporter in the world out.
Well, judging on that exit poll, Ian Duncan-Smith is in a pretty precarious position. He's been an MP here for more than 30 years. Could he...
I was going to have a new boss. My Secretary of State had already quit.
With the tiniest majority as the seat has changed over the years. But one of the interesting things here is will there be a big split in the Labour vote? Because 8 days into this campaign, the Labour candidate who fought against him and nearly won last time, she was deselected. And she's now standing as an independent. A Labour candidate was parachuted in. So Labour aren't celebrating just yet here. We'll get the declaration about 3:15. But if he goes, it's obviously one of the big Tory guns disappearing.
Emma, thanks very much. We'll check in back with you a bit later. And that seat there, one of several around the country where actually there's been a lot of controversy locally, where despite this huge movement we're seeing between blue to red, actually there's some wrinkles in places on the ground, and that seat might be somewhere where something interesting is happening.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, what are your thoughts on how the night is going so far?
A couple of observations listening to Bridget Phillipson and her speech, victory speech in Sunderland last 10-15 years. Firstly, the first MP elected to the new Parliament, which is a moment worth noting, isn't it? Ahead of the flurry that will come in the small hours. We've got 649 to go.
Everyone a fascinating story.
Absolutely, and with real jeopardy for many people in each one of them. That struck me.
It's been your first time at a civil service in Labour government? No, it won't be now. I'm a civil servant for a very long time. I've worked on... Oh, Blythe are coming in.
Northumberland and candidates
onto the stage for the declaration.
So the candidates go up to the stage there. Sunderland South, and Sunderland South beat them to it. So this will be our second result of the evening.
I worked in the Blair's government.
And here's the acting returning officer.
He's got fetcher glasses on, even though she already knows the results.
Best bit of the night so far.
I, Lucia Bridgman, returning officer for the Blythe and Ashington parliamentary constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows. Ian Lavery, Labour Party, 20,030. Maureen Levy, the Conservative Party candidate, 6,121.
Conservatives definitely haven't got Blythe.
Steve Leyland, the Green Party, 1,960. Mark Peart, Reform UK, 10,857.
A lot of votes for Reform.
Stephen Anthony Salidas, Liberal Democrats, 1,433.
Liberal Democrats coming out of the Green Party.
And that Ian Lavery is
So,
duly
yeah,
elected
Labour
as
in.
Member of Parliament for the Blythe and Ashington constituency.
Huge round of applause for
53% turnout there.
Number of votes, 20,030. Reform, 10,857. I mean, really quite astonishing there. Andrea Leadsom, that's part of the problem for Labour, isn't it? For the Conservatives, isn't it?
That really is. I completely agree. I mean, it does look as though it's Reform that's caused a huge amount of damage. And I think the interesting thing there, which is something for the Conservative Party to think about, for all of us to think about, is that perhaps it's that we've not been conservative enough. You know,
Going full.
we
There's no Communist Party
I mean, just this evening before
here.
I came here, I was in the pub actually in my local village, and it's Silverstone. It's the Grand Prix this weekend, so the pub was full of people who were there for the Grand Prix, and they were saying to me, you know, the trouble is the Conservatives are just not normal. They're not conservative enough, and so you know people have been looking to reform for that. And there's an awful lot of analysis we're going to have to do after this.
You say you don't look like you've been normal. I mean, that's quite an accusation. Let's show the
It
share
is,
of the
yeah.
votes here. I mean, to be clear, it's a Labour victory here. It's a Labour healthy.
Absolutely.
But what we're
Yeah.
looking at is what's happened underneath that. And the
Yeah.
share of the vote, 27% to the Reform Party.
Yeah.
Way ahead of you on 15%. And let's show you the change in the share, 18% up
Yeah.
for Reform, minus 18 for the Conservatives. Now, it's worth remembering that part of the world was very strong.
Nope, another sale come through.
Brexit backing.
Indeed, yeah.
But you just said you didn't look like you were normal.
And what I
Tiny
meant,
voters. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so what I meant by that is that specifically what this group of people were saying to me is they're sick of all this woke stuff. They're sick of all this, trying to be more left wing than Labour, and they don't feel that the Conservatives are being conservative
Well,
enough.
what do you mean by that? All this woke stuff? Can you
Well,
tell
you
me
know,
what
that
actually
is
for people changing their vote?
all
You're
that
going to bring
is.
back national service.
Yeah, well, national service in the sense of supporting young people to be able to do something worthwhile to put into their community, not national service in the sense of going around shooting people. So I think that was misrepresented, if I can say that. But no, I think normal, but in terms of being ordinary, being understanding the things that voters are really concerned about. And I think
Just sold some condoms, believe it or not.
People are concerned about levels of migration. People are concerned about the cost of living. People are concerned about some of the issues for.
So that was a 7.9% swing from Labour to Reform.
And of course, having been a government for 14 years, it's very difficult to get away from being accountable for all of those things. I think what it evidences is government is extremely difficult. And I don't personally think Labour has the answers. What I do think is that clearly people are choosing to vote for reform in the hope that there's another third party out there that can have some of those answers.
Andrew, just a quick question, if I may. There'll be people looking at the exit poll tonight right and anticipating that there's going to be a government with an awful lot of power, a big majority, and we'll be looking to your party and indeed others to provide a viable opposition.
Yes.
Can you be certain, after all of the turbulence in the Conservative Party in the last 6-7 years, that there isn't going to be a descent into civil war within the Conservative Party, making it even harder to be that viable opposition in the coming months and years?
I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but I certainly know that a lot of my colleagues have been very concerned. I mean, we've all seen the polls over a long period of time not moving. And so it is very much recognised that we're going to have to regroup and rethink. And the Conservative Party is the natural party of government and has been in this country for many long years. And so we will be very ruthless about it. We will certainly be very forensic about it. And I hope and expect that we will be regaining the trust of the public. And as potentially the shine comes off the Labour Party, because there hasn't been that enthusiasm necessarily, I think we will start to see people coming back to us.
Okay, well, a promise of ruthless.
I don't know about turnout.
For now, just hearing as part of those recriminations may perhaps come from Sir Robert Buckland, former cabinet minister. We're hearing on the ground in Swindon South his seats a classic bellwether for hearing that the Conservatives are conceding defeat, but we'll bring you that as soon as we know for sure.
Fascinating. Let's go to Professor Sir John Curtis. John, I just want to check, the results that we've had, are they in line with the exit poll, particularly what seems to be on the surface success for reform?
Yes and no is the answer, Clive. So far as Labour is concerned, the 2-point rise in Blyth and the 7-point rise in Sunderland South is pretty much in line with what we were expecting. The rise in reform support, although quite substantial, up 13 and 18 points, is actually a little bit less than we were expecting, and therefore conversely the decline
Night, Rebecca.
support is rather less. Now, the truth is, although these are both Labour seats, and therefore normally we're not expecting the Conservative vote to fall that heavily in Conservative seats, or relatively not so heavily, but these are also heavily Leave areas, and we were therefore anticipating that perhaps with reform would put in a strong performance and push the Conservative vote down to rather a greater extent than we expected other Labour seats. So we'll have to wait and see. But broad message, Conservative votes down very heavily, Reform is up a lot, and Labour are making a modest advance. So that broad picture at least is there with the exit poll. It's just the fine detail we're still going to see where we end up at the end of the night.
And turnout has been down as well. How much has that been a contributing factor?
Well, we don't know whether it's a contributing factor, but I think there has been a widespread expectation that turnout would fall, and these first two results are at least consistent with that expectation. And to that extent, at least, we may well discover that we're heading towards one of the lower turnouts in general elections in post-war electoral history. And, you know, that's what
I don't think it is a great turnout from what they're saying.
an election in which the polls were suggesting it's pretty clear who was going to win, and where there wasn't that much difference, despite both parties' denials, that much difference between Conservative and Labour in much of what they were offering the election.
All right. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Now then, let's go to Jeremy with what he has from our latest calculations as they develop. It looks like it could be tonight, Jeremy, a really massive redrawing of the map. Oh, look, Hamden,
Yes.
you've got a big one
Look
there.
at that was so brilliantly cued in. Thank you. Yeah, look, here is our map. This is from last time, though, crucially. So this is the 2019 map. And you see, don't you, the wash of Conservative blue from Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority. And I'll switch it now to what the exit poll is showing us. And we stress again and again, just predictions. But look at the way Labour red spreads out from the urban areas to cover so much of England. Bear in mind, a lot of the Conservative seats are larger geographically. That one I'm just stepping on there is Rishi Sunak's, for example. So this kind of map can give you a false impression that there are more Tory seats than there are. I will just say, though, it's very interesting to see maybe Reform less strong in Scotland and the Conservatives here in the south of Scotland and the middle of Scotland as well. Scotland and the Conservatives is going to be an interesting subtext in the story of the night. Now, let me do something that will help us understand what the map is looking like, and it's this. If I change every single seat and make it the same size, make them into hexagons, it then shows you really clearly what we're looking at. So we're back in 2019 here, and you can see the scale at the Boris Johnson victory card.
Hello, Limelight.
Blue hexagons. I'll now change this. to
Thank
the
you.
exit
I'm
poll.
not sure how
So
much longer
just
I'll be able to
have a
stay
look
up myself, to be honest. I'm pretty tired.
Okay. This is 2019 still, and I'm showing you the majorities. The majorities are shown by the height of the hexagon. The taller the hexagon, the clearer the win for the party whose colour the hexagon is. So you can see an awful lot of 2019 big majorities here for the Conservatives, particularly in the south of England. So now let's change to 2024 and let's have a look and see what the exit poll is showing us. And look at those hexagons lowering. The Conservative seat majorities going down, being replaced by red ones. You've got, for example, Portsmouth North, Penny Mordaunt's seat just over there, leader of the House of Commons, has gone from quite a sizable Conservative hexagon to a red one. So that is what we're looking at. It's an amazing map, that, isn't it? Because when you make the constituencies all the same size, you get a real sense of just how much Labour red is covering the UK. And of course, the interesting thing as well is that you're seeing some marginal Conservative seats, which have been blue for a long time, turning into safe Labour. Back to you.
Jeremy, thank you very much indeed.
Well, I think we can
But it does show you what
probably say that Labour are going to win this.
Okay, so we've had a few results in. Chris.
Reform UK. It's quite a standout. I know we've reflected on it in the last couple of minutes. I'm sorry, I was just typing something away there for the BBC News app. But given what I've just typed, I might as well say it out loud as well.
Moonlighting already.
But yeah, a bit of, exactly. Those first two results, seeing how well Reform were doing. As we were reflecting a few minutes ago, yes, in parts of the world, in the northeast of England, that significantly backed Brexit. But here is a party that, I'm exaggerating badly, but was sort of, came about a week last Wednesday. It's a new entity on the political stage. One of the standout moments of the election campaign was Nigel Farage's decision to come back in, be the leader of the party, be a candidate too. And one of the big questions was how much difference would they actually make? And the early evidence, both from the exit poll, but with the caveats around smaller parties, and these first two results, is they are making one heck of an impression.
Don't know, Caffrey, don't know.
Those first two results, and how that maps out through the night, and then crucially, particularly if Reform manage a number akin to what we're suggesting in the exit poll of 13, the dynamic in the House of Commons of the Reform with potentially around a dozen MPs and a rump of a Conservative Party thrashing around trying to find out who it is, what it wants to be and what went wrong, is a very interesting kind of conversation that we're going to see alongside a period, as it would seem, that a new Labour government is taking office and getting its head around what it's going to do.
Well, let's have that conversation then right now with Dr. David Bull, who joins us from the Reform Party. You are looking extremely chipper, I have to say.
Yes.
Do you think, from your own data, that actually achieving 13 seats is something that looks realistic?
Yes, is the short answer. If you look at this, and if that exit poll is right, this is an historic moment. As Chris said, we're 4 years
Reform,
old.
David, you
This has come out of nowhere.
Deputy,
I remember talking to Richard Tice 4 years ago.
is on the TV now. His surname is Bull.
What we're seeing is actually the shy reformers coming out in droves. We saw this with Brexit, didn't we? The shy Brexiteers. So the pollsters were caught off guard, and once again they've been caught off guard. Now, if that is true, and we get 13 seats, that is extraordinary. And Nigel has made this very clear. This is the beginning of a much bigger movement. And it is a movement. It's from the ground up. Chris mentioned something else, which is actually in the northwest and the northeast. We're taking votes not just from the Conservatives, we're taking them from Labour as well. People who say this country is broken and they want it back.
Where do you feel you have been picking up? Is it a uniform picture, or is it, as you might expect, from areas that were very strongly Eurosceptic?
Who's going to win the duck race today?
You say it's come out of nowhere. It hasn't really. You had UKIP, then the Brexit Party, then the Reform Party. It's a development in an existing movement, right?
Yes. So what's interesting is if you look at vote share, we believe our vote share is twice that of the Liberal Democrats.
Twice.
We believe that to be true. And if that is the case, and we only get a quarter of the seats, then that says something about the parliamentary system and why first past the post, I think, is broken, and why we need to move to something like proportional representation, which, of course, we had in the European elections, and that's how we became the biggest party in, I know I can see you shaking your head next to me, but we became the biggest party in the European Parliament because we had the De Hond principle, and that's how we had so many. The Conservatives don't want it, Labour don't want it, but actually I think people in Britain do want it.
Quite early in the night for a discussion about this.
Well, yeah, I like to elevate the conversation.
But, and I want to get the reaction from the other parties as we roll through the night. But just many people watching going, David Bull will think actually what they saw from Reform, aside from people like you and people like Nigel Farage coming out and giving interviews in publicly, what many people will see, however, is a revelation almost daily of truly vile and offensive remarks and views that have been shared by a significant number of your candidates. Some of them were condemned very quickly by the party's leadership. Some of those people were still allowed to run as candidates despite having expressed things that were really offensive to many members of the country. So that, do you think
let's
that's
be very
partly
clear. It is a minority of those people. We had really strict vetting procedures in play.
But they didn't seem to work
Well,
very well.
let me just explain that. So over the last 4 years, we've been vetting candidates really thoroughly. We paid a company a lot of money to vet those candidates. They let us down. But also, when the Prime Minister called the election, it caught us on the hop side. It caught the Conservatives very much on the hop.
Oh,
And then we have to
another sale.
Now, we have gone from nothing to fill
Phil Collins Serious Hits Live 2 disc DVD set has just sold.
homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitic behaviour, or anything like that. And if any of us find out that that is the case, they're out.
How many votes sales have had during this election coverage then? 1, 2,
Well, I think it's
3,
I think it's in every party. If you look, there were 20, weren't there, in the
3.
Green Party accused of anti-Semitic abuse. So it is in every party. The Conservative Party has a similar problem to a lesser extent.
How often they were formally nominated?
But remember, but also we're 4 years old, so we had to literally sprint to get those candidates. And I think anyone who looks at the rise of Reform will see that actually what we're doing is breaking political history. I said this before. Everyone said in that Brexit result, you won't do it. We changed history. We're about to change history once again.
Do you know where your 13 seats, if you get that far, will be? I mean, you hinted earlier, you say you're picking up everywhere, but do you have a clear view of where you're likely to take? Was Nigel Farage likely
I don't want to bet on it, but Clapton, I hope with Nigel, I hope Richard Tice, I think Rupert Lowe, Great Yarmouth would be a very good.
Yeah, condoms and Phil Collins.
Let's see. Look, I'm standing in West Suffolk. It has a majority of 23,000, which should be a safe Conservative seat. I'm going to stick to the figures to make a chief of staff. Matt Hancock had that seat, of course. That was in the height of the COVID pandemic. That hasn't played very well. I think it's about local candidates with local issues. Is there a personal vote there as well? I don't know. We'll find out in the middle of the morning.
Thank you for now.
Thank you. Angela, you are going to be leaving us quite soon. But I just wonder, we've talked about Reform, they seem to be doing the most beneficial in some of the seats that you are likely to lose according to the exit poll. Was there enough of an attempt at the beginning of this campaign to try to win over their support?
So obviously the exit polls.
I would like to see a nice spike in sales.
We will be careful to analyse that at the end of the night.
I am on
At the same time,
at
there's
current
no
10
doubt
to
that the
midnight.
Reform Party has been a party
£252 of sales
people not being
today,
conservative enough. I mean,
which is down on yesterday. Yesterday was 271, which was down on the day before, which is 295, which is down on the day before, which is 321. So my sales are showing a nice downward peak, downward trend.
and obviously it's been a great result for Reform, according to the exit poll. A terrible night for the Conservatives. But what it does mean is we need to regroup, rethink, regain the trust of the population in order to come back fighting next time around.
Thanks very much indeed. Relieved that you stood down rather than having to go through all this.
Yeah.
Devastated.
You
But
knew this was going to happen.
yeah. Well, no, not necessarily. My passion is early years, as you well know, and I want to go and do some of that before I'm too old.
Okay, well, lots of bits of it. We thank you for coming in and starting some of the evening class. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go back to the northeast where we had our two results this evening. Blythe and Ashington and Houghton and Sunderland South. Naga Munchetti and Sally Nugent are standing by. Naga, I'm sorry, it was Jackie from the bank who did it for Sunderland. They got in there first.
I heard Sally say that was their secret weapon, and there were lots of kind of indications here at Blythe and Ashington that we were just about to declare a few minutes to go, and then it kind of went quiet. Sally and I were mass messaging each other actually, just going, "Who do you think it's going to be?" But yes, we had our declaration for one of the 4 constituencies here that are having results in Lavery, from Labour winning, as you've been discussing. And interesting that Reform came second here too. A little point, there are 4 constituencies, as I said, which are going to be declared. You saw Maureen Levy on the stage there when the declaration happened, who was Conservative. She obviously didn't win, but her husband, Ian Levy, who's also up for Conservatives, is also waiting for his declaration. That will be for Cramlington and Killingworth, which will happen around 12:45. So we're still waiting for more results here. But yes, Sally won. Sunderland won. Congratulations, Sunderland.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that.
Sally 1-0 over Naga, and it sounds as if it was Jackie from the bank who did the damage. What won it?
I tell you what, when I walked in here tonight, Jackie took me to one side and she said, "We are going to win," which is what I told you earlier on in the programme. And I believed her. But I tell you, there's something else about this count here that was quite interesting, was that I think they quite liked being the underdog tonight. I know they weren't the favourite to take back the crown of being the first count to declare.
No, it's all going on the surveyors.
There's a little bit of
I'll pay the surveyor on Friday. Oh, it will be poor after that. And then the MOT and service is due on the Land Rover later in the month, so it comes out as quickly as it comes in.
I was going to make some kind of joke about Sunderland and football and getting used to not winning, but I can't make it now because they won.
Oh my word! You're smiling gamely there, Naga, which is good to see. All right, Sally, Naga, thank you. Live and Sunderland South.
See, that's friendly rivalry, but I'm afraid that elections aren't all about friendly rivalry. Some of the battles are absolutely as bruising as they
I was
come.
going to say, actually, Peter Manson just picked me up on my pronunciation of Houghton. He says Houghton.
Well, this
Houghton. Exactly, Chris. Thank you.
And tax and insurance due. Pay for that every month.
Career in the northeast. Points out on day 1 to me how to pronounce that particular part of the
I know, but we're starting early. What time do we start midnight yet?
We've got serious business to get on with because Rita has got some really interesting analysis, because we've mentioned that the results coming in from the northeast were from areas where they were very strongly Leave back in, and you've been looking at what's going on in terms of the difference between Leave and Remain seats. Absolutely, Laura. And given the conversation you were just having with Dame Andrew Leadsom as well about what sort of damage reform might have done to the Conservatives. So this is based on the exit poll information that we have.
It's no longer about what Labour have done, it's about what Reform have done. It's an interesting narrative from an impartial point of view.
The Conservative share of the vote is going down everywhere. Down 15% there, Labour up 4%, Lib Dems flatlining, Reform up 9% and Greens up 6% in Remain seats. Compare that to Leave seats. Conservatives down very sharply, 28% compared to 2019. Labour and the Lib Dems up a little bit. Reform up 18%, and the Greens also up 5%. But look at that, and one wonders whether that big rise in the Reform vote in those seats that voted to leave the European Union, whether that is because people feel that they have not got the dividend that they were expecting from the Conservatives, and whether that has hurt them in those sorts of seats. I suspect that is something that we will be discussing in the hours, days and weeks to come. Laura.
The final ballot box has arrived in Wrexham.
But it's a long time ago now, that vote in 2016.
So Wrexham could be declaring soon.
Oh! Okay, we're going to go to Welling. And Regina Vaganathan is there, standing by. Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, his seat, of course, at the beginning of the night, our exit poll suggested he had a 6% chance of hanging on to his seat. How are the Tory camp feeling there?
Well, I just had a message from someone close to Grant Shapps. It reads, underdog but alive. So I think the Shapps camp is remaining optimistic but realistic, because it would be a big hill to climb for Grant Shapps to retain his seat, one that he's held 2005, and a majority of around 11,000 last time. Now, the Labour camp here aren't really giving much away, Clive. They're just saying that they've had a good polling day and that we should wait until around 3:30 when the result is
Good
called.
God,
But it's worth
3:30.
mentioning that the exit poll put Reform in third place here, and Reform
This is worse than
is
car
saying that they
boots.
are feeling positive here as well. Now, of course, you may remember that it was a certain defence secretary in 1997 that delivered
Maybe we should do
one of
like
those election night moments.
voting happens until 10. Doesn't get counted until the next day.
Regina, thank you.
And we are going to just have a brief word with Peter Madison, who's still with us here in the studio. In terms
Well, Peter Madison's back.
a reminder, the exit polls predicting a Labour majority of 170, and yet David Bowell from Reform is telling us very clearly Reform has been taking votes from Labour.
Yes, I'm not really surprised by that, because although there are views and opinions of a nationalist and populist kind growing on the right of British politics, I don't think anything like the number of voters who have supported the reform could be described as nationalist, populist, or right-wing. They're looking for a very handy protest party to support, because they are furious with the Conservatives. And I have lost count of the number of people who have told
Oh, here we go. It's the Conservatives' votes fault that Labour are losing votes to Reform.
I think the Tories, there's no way I'm going to vote for the Conservative candidate, but I can't yet make up my mind who to protest with, either Labour or Reform. So they're not guided by some ideology. They're not racists. They're not anti-Semites. They're people who are looking for a handy protest vote, either Labour or Reform. Some have gone, the bulk of them, of course, have gone to Labour. Some inevitably have gone to Reform.
But why did they go to you then? If all of the things that you said,
Most of them have.
but in terms of they're not a party that existed in that kind of force a few years ago. So why didn't you think you were able to get them across?
No, they've existed for some time in various guises with different names. And of course, Nigel himself, Nigel Farage, is the sort of running thread through all this. Now, look, at the core of the Reform UK, there are a whole number of extremely unpleasant people with views who would be rejected by the overwhelming mass of the British people. But those views held by those people at the top of the Reform are not known to the general public. The general public are looking for parties to back, candidates to support, in order to lash out against the Conservatives.
It's
And
absolute
Reform have been the beneficiary.
With the greatest of respect, that's absolute nonsense. These
We've
are
seen your candidate.
There are a very
We've
small.
seen your candidate.
Let me finish, please.
We've seen your candidate.
There are a very small number of candidates, and we have removed them and dealt with them. Let me just make one thing very clear, which is that we stood down. We gave Boris Johnson an 80-seat majority because he said he was going to get Brexit done. He did not get Brexit done. We have put a border in the Irish Sea. We've annexed the United Kingdom, annexed Northern Ireland. Now, that is unacceptable. Tell me another country that goes around purposely annexing parts of its own territory. I think it's unacceptable. And actually, what people want around the country, they see Labour, you're going to put taxes up enormously by £15 billion, it seems, and people are against that. They want low tax, low regulation, and high growth.
I'm not talking people voting because they want less protection and more exposure to market forces. Quite honestly,
People voted for reform,
nor
patriotic.
do I think people voted for reform because they objected to some notional border down the Irish Sea. I think you're living in a fantasy land with respect. No, people, of course, people have voted for an insurgent party, but I would not describe this as a popular insurgency, and I would not flatter Nigel Farage by describing Reform UK as a movement.
Madison, how do you hang on to those voters now, who were disgruntled, some of whom have come back to the Labour fold?
I may have eaten too many crisps.
How do you hang on to them, given that you have signed up to the fiscal rules of the Conservatives? How do you hang on to them when you have decided that you are going to get debt down in relation to GDP by 2028? You haven't got any money. and you're not going to borrow. You've made that clear. So how are you going to give these people hope and move towards you?
Well, Clyde, let's not sort of rehearse all the arguments of the election campaign.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
And all that, Look, make an important point, however. We not only want to hang on to those who voted for us in the election, we want to win over people who voted for Reform UK. We want to demonstrate that we are a party of all the people, not just people who live in inner cities, who have college degrees, who are young and have good, reasonably well-paid positions in good professions. We want to retain and or win the votes of non-graduates, non-college leavers, people who frankly work in the everyday economy and feel quite disrespected and quite disempowered. Now that is something that has grown over a number of years, and it's something my party has got to understand, come to terms with, and engage with, and make sure that we're delivering for those.
But you see, when you go around the country, people see Labour. It is a metropolitan party for people in Islington. It does not represent people in the north. It doesn't represent their views and values. And that is what Reform UK does. This is
David, how do you account for all the seats that we've won in the northeast and northwest of England?
But do you not think that for a small party, a new party, by the way, let me be very clear, we are a new party, completely new party, new structures, and we have done extremely, if that poll is right, and it may not be right, but if that poll is right, then we have done extremely well. Also, what are you going to do with regards to the European Union? You're going to take us closer and closer to Europe, and that is not what people want.
We've got a declaration coming in.
Oh, here we go. Next results coming in. Sunderland Central.
I, Patrick Melian, Acting Returning Officer, hereby give notice that the total number of votes for each candidate for the Sunderland Central constituency is as follows. Lewis Malcolm Atkinson, 16,852.
So I think Labour have won that one.
Chris Angon, 10,779.
I think Reform have come second.
Rachel Sarah Featherstone, 2,993. Niall
Green Party not done very well.
3,602. Greg Peacock, 5,731. The number of rejected ballot papers was 99. The turnout is 52.6%.
52% turnout again.
Atkinson has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
Feeling there is Atkinson there, an NHS manager who's won the seat for Labour with 16,852 votes. But again, we see that fascinating state of the race there. Reform not just beating the Conservatives in second place there, but almost getting twice as many votes as them. Leaving Labour with a majority.
A lot of votes coming in for Reform again, over 10,000.
But fascinating and worrying for Conservatives seeing Reform in second place.
Yeah, and a low turnout as well, and that's been a feature of the first two races that we brought in the declarations from. Let's look at the share. You've got Labour flatlining there, Reform up 15 points, the Conservatives down 21. There you go. That is what is happening so far, and it's early days, no question. But Reform are eating into the Conservative share of the vote there. And look at the swing there from Labour to Reform.
7.7% swing to Reform.
And you see that kind of move there. And Peter Madison, we're hearing from our
Huge swings there.
91% chance that Reform might take your old patch, the constituency of Hartlepool. If Hartlepool is won by the Reform Party, how would that feel for you?
I'd feel extremely bad and very disappointed, and I'd be surprised if it happened.
You would be surprised. David?
I think you are about to be surprised. This is when I've been to Hartlepool, I've campaigned in Hartlepool, and when you knock on doors, people say they are sick and tired of the two main parties that don't represent them. That, you know, in terms of the offering, it doesn't represent the people who say Clacton either. And I think this is very much a people's default. So you can call it a protest vote if you want, but actually it's not. It's an uprising. It's saying to the political parties, enough is enough.
I was talking to a Labour analyst before we came on air. He was saying that on the doorstep, the response was very much all the same. All the same. And in that kind of atmosphere, it is going to be the potential.
No more, Chris. We'll leave those, Chris.
All parts of the country have almost literally had the hope beaten out of them and their trust in the whole political system beaten out of them by one disaster after another. The country feels so broken. It's hardly surprising that people are very, very angry. And now what the Labour Party has to do, form the government, as your exit poll would suggest it will, is prove them wrong, that they can see hope restored in the future of the country, and they can see a political system which is working for them. And that is the great challenge for an incoming Labour government.
Peter Mandelson, and then thank you both very much.
Right, well, just let's remind you of what the exit poll predicts: an enormous Labour majority, 410 seats, up significantly. The Conservatives crashing down to 131 seats. That's what the forecast is. Will one of them be the seat of Penny Mordaunt?
They are very serious.
She's been the MP of Portsmouth North. Mark Easton, our colleague, is there tonight. Mark, are you seeing glum faces or relief in Penny Mordaunt's camp?
Well, very interesting, actually. Most of the candidates are here. Penny Mordaunt is not here, and we're told that she may not turn up until very close to the declaration, which is expected at around 3:30 this morning. Incredibly busy.
Second favourite. Who's what? Well, not Welsh anyway. But who is the favourite?
I saw Jeremy Vine earlier saying it was a blue hexagon that was going to go red. The exit poll says actually too close to call, but at the same time says Penny Mordaunt having just a 25% chance of holding on here. The swing required for her to lose, if you just look at Tory to Labour, would be 17.2%. But what the sort of
Tom Joke, never heard of him. Is he new? What does he sell?
In the reform vote, just as you've been talking about all evening, some people are suggesting we might have sort of 25% reform vote in Portsmouth North, which would be a huge success for them, and perhaps would be the explanation for why indeed Portsmouth Guildhall is going to see one of the big shocks of the election 2024.
Richard Payne will be a Welshman soon.
Penny Mordaunt turns up at her count a bit later in the evening. Let's see what happens there.
Yep, 3 seats declared so far. 3 Labour wins. So far, so normal, but the turnout has been low, and the story is reform. Their share of the vote going up in those 3 counties so far.
Sells records. Oh, like Brum. You got a record shop. Yeah, the one in Belfast looks all right. Hello, Andrea. I'll go in Belfast next time.
Now, traditionally, the DUP
Bit of move happening soon. It's a contest to see whether my move or his will happen first. Yeah, just like Brum. I don't know. I've seen Brum twerking.
However, the DUP have had a really torrid time of it recently. Just at Easter, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, who was the leader, was charged with historic sex offences. They're charges that he denies. He resigned. His seat is vulnerable. Even more importantly, behind me, Belfast East is being counted. That is the new leader's seat, Gavin Robinson, and that is a really tight race up against another leader, the leader of the Alliance Party. Now,
17 weeks, yeah.
2 party leaders, just 1 seat.
I accepted an offer on Dad's house on December the 17th, I think. Still hasn't completed.
They had 7 seats at the last election. It looks like they're going to hold all 7 seats.
Why would you ever want to erase a memory of me?
And the DUP lose a couple, then Sinn Féin could be the biggest single party from Northern Ireland at Westminster. It would be the first time ever that the Nationalists have held that position, that a Nationalist party held that position. It would be a significant milestone, and it could happen tonight.
It'll be fascinating. Andrea, thank you for that.
It's been 3 weeks since my offer was accepted.
Different ways. Let's go to James Cook, our Scotland editor, who's in Glasgow for us tonight.
Maybe long, actually.
James, we've talked about this suggestion from the exit poll that the SNP might crash down to 10 seats at Westminster, which would be an absolutely phenomenal result for Scottish Labour. But from what your sense is of the way things are going, what's the
Is
mood
Biden
in the
winning?
various camps there?
I was looking. I couldn't see Biden or Trump on the ballot paper today. I don't know what happened.
It is, I know, time's flying on, but we do not have any hard facts from Scotland yet. I mean, you're right, the exit poll would be an enormous blow for the Scottish National Party. The Labour Party would be delighted if that were correct. I think there's some doubt.
Yeah, Rishi's speech and Keir's speech. I'll trade you Biden and Trump. I hear Kanye's making an appearance again.
Perhaps putting them to one side, looking at the bigger picture here, both the SNP and Labour are accepting that this is Labour's night, that Labour are roaring back in Scotland. It won MP, let's not forget, one MP at the last election in Scotland. And they ruled this land effectively. I don't mean they literally ruled it, but they were in charge. They were the biggest party from 1959 in every general election through to 2010. A decade or so ago, around the time of the independence referendum, Scottish politics, Laura, as you know very well, was completely scrambled.
Not yet.
Remains scrambled. And I think what's interesting is, why has there been such a surge in support for Labour? Lots of the voters that I've been talking to travelling around the country have been saying, one, they want to get the Tories out. They don't think they're doing a good job of generalising, of course. Two, they're not delighted with the performance of the SNP and concerned about some of the other things going on with the party in terms of a police investigation into its finances and so on. But three, have I heard massive enthusiasm for Labour from voters? Not necessarily. And I think that will pose a challenge for the Labour Party to prove that they can deliver meaningful change for the people of Scotland, because the key thing to remember here, you know the figure, 45%. In the last general election, the SNP won 45% of the vote. In the independence referendum in 2014, people voting for independence were 45% of the electorate who voted. And what we've seen this time, we don't know the share for the SNP in this election, but it seems likely that what we're seeing is evidence at the ballot box of a detachment between support for the SNP and support for independence, which remains round about that 45% mark, according to some polls. So, of course, this will not be, if the result is as we expect, the mandate for negotiations on a second independence referendum that John Swinney, the new SNP leader, had suggested it might be, and had certainly hoped it would be. But it doesn't mean the issue is completely gone away. It does mean that there is no obvious vehicle for supporters of independence to jump on at this moment to deliver what they ultimately want to see for Scotland.
James Cook in Glasgow, thank you very much indeed. So many implications for the results as they come in. But of course, the biggest implication, of course, at this stage is that Keir Starmer is heavily on track to become the next Prime Minister.
Partly because, as James was saying, there may be Labour gains in Scotland, but also potentially Howell Griffith is in Wales.
I don't plan to sing for
potentially making gains where
until Wrexham declares, probably. Might be sooner. Pretty tired.
Absolutely. If you remember, Clive, back in 2019, it was a Tory
And of course, we're in Cardiff at the minute. What, not interested in Cardiff. Get off. We want Wrexham.
Tonight, as we speak, we're on wipeout watch. Now, the boundary changes mean
Yeah, 14th. Yeah, need to.
Essentially, using that exit poll, it may be that the Tories
Week on
want
Sunday.
one single seat, and that comes with lots of caveats. Not least the fact that it's not a Tory candidate fighting for it. It's Montgomeryshire and Glyndŵr. A name has been in the headlines because of the betting scandal.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Craig Williams, suspended by the party, but according to the exit poll, at least,
Okay, Howell,
he
I'm
may
going to
well
have to
be
cut
the
into
only
you,
one
mate. Sorry
to
about
survive
that.
this
Sorry, we've got a declaration coming
Oh,
up.
a declaration coming in.
Tonight, we get our future back. You voted for
Swindon.
change. A changed Labour Party that will change our country for the better.
I'm assuming that Labour have won Swindon.
Of Conservative government, change is coming. This is the moment we press the reset button for the country, to get our economy firing on all cylinders, to invest in our schools and our NHS, to restore honesty, decency and integrity to politics. Now, as some of you may know, I'm a Swindon girl, born and bred, and I can tell you this, I'm on a mission to restore pride and opportunity to my hometown, a mission to ensure kids growing up here today don't have to move out to get on, a mission.
Do you want to shout or does it not matter? I have to remain impartial.
And the contribution of all is valued. It's the honour of my life to have been elected to represent my hometown. Together, we are going to put Swindon back on the map for all the right reasons. I'd like to thank everyone who has made this election run so smoothly, to the returning officer, to everyone counting here tonight, and to the police. I'd like to thank my incredible campaign team. You know who you all are. There is not a door in Swindon South that we haven't knocked on, and there are plenty we've knocked on many times. I've had to tell some people I'm not stalking them. I can't thank you and them enough. To my agent, Patrick Herring, to my local party chair, Joe Garton, and to the leader of the council, Jim Robbins, thank you for your unwavering support and good advice. I'd also like to pay tribute to Robert. Robert, you've been a gentleman in this contest. You've been a hard-working servant of Swindon, a senior government minister, and an ardent campaigner on the issues closest to your heart. The political winds of change may be blowing tonight, but I hope your contribution to public life continues. And finally, I'd like to thank my family. To my dad, who has been my hero from day one growing up in Colebrook Road, thank you for painting my office, putting up my garden stakes, and putting out my bins when I forget them. Thank you to my mum for refilling my freezer, for providing a one-woman news monitoring service at the Swindon Advertiser, and for always believing in me. And thank you to my husband, Martin. 2 years ago, I said I wanted to come home. We uprooted a life we had built together in South East London, and you didn't blink. I simply wouldn't be the person I am without you. Thank you, Swindon. Thank you to all those who voted for me, and to those who didn't let me say this. I am here for you. I will represent our whole community with dedication and humility. Swindon, thank you for giving me
62% turnout in Swindon. Labour, over 9,000, 9,500 majority.
Labour MP from Swindon South. That's the first Labour gain from the night. She's taken the seat from Robert Buckland, the former Tory minister. He's the first Conservative to lose. Let's listen in.
Officer, an incredible counting team that makes Swindon one of the most efficient counting centres in the United Kingdom. I know you've all been working for much of the day and for the rest of the night. There are many friendly faces here who we need to rely on for democracy to happen. And that's what's happened tonight. I'd like to thank the people of Swindon South as well, or should I say South Swindon, a seat that I had the honour of representing for 14 years through 4 elections. Although it was not to be for a 5th time, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the tens of thousands.
16% swing.
Supported me over the years, and will continue to do so at this election. And to those who didn't, I say my good wishes, and that my hopes go with you for the future of our town, my home, and our country. And I want to thank Heidi for her heartfelt words, and I genuinely wish her well. She is a person who comes to this with goodwill and the right motives, and I'm glad that on a personal level she's able to serve once again. I want to thank my family, my wife, Sian, my children, who have, through the 20 years that I have been candidate and MP here, put aside their priorities, not just for mine, but for the people who I've served, and for my incredible campaign team, who ignored the national polls and worked day and night to help me in this campaign, and I owe them a huge debt of gratitude. Now, tonight's result means that I cannot, for the time being, be a direct participant in our parliamentary process, which you know I value and love dearly. I'm proud of the work that I've done to advance the cause of autistic and disabled people in our country and people who live in abusive and controlling domestic relationships and the victims of serious crime in particular. I'm deeply proud of the investment that I've helped to secure for Swindon, from the new A&E at GWH to the vitally important heritage work at the Health Hydro and the Honda site redevelopment. But there's much more, of course, to do. I wish Heidi well, and I know that she will carry on the work that I have started. Now, our very political system is at a crossroads. Do we value those who work to bring people together and who come into politics to do something rather than be someone? Or do we shrug our shoulders and accept that politics is a mere circus where people compete for attention by saying things that they either know to be untrue or which raise hopes and expectations in a way that further erodes trust? I know what side I'm on. I know what choice I would make. And I believe with sincere and fierce conviction that my party has to make the right choice too, if we are to inspire a new generation with the real promise of a better future. Thank you, Swindon, for giving me the opportunity of my life to make a positive difference to our town and our nation.
Well, that's 4 seats declared.
Well, 2 speeches full of strong convictions there. The main headline, Heidi Alexander, who was a former Labour MP, has got a huge swing of 16% and will return to Parliament this time as the MP for Swindon South. But also a very fierce speech there from Sir Robert Buckland, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, who accused some in his party, not directly, but it was very clear what he was saying. He was asking whether they value people who work together or whether those who accept that politics is a circus and say things to be untrue. So a taste there of some of the very fierce fights that may well be ahead for the Conservative Party as the night and the days progress after what appears to be on course to be a shattering defeat for them.
Yeah, and the civility shown, both well, it's something that you don't see that often, frankly, in our modern politics. And I think it's important that we reflect on that, Sadiq Khan, because Heidi Alexander left
Sadiq Khan's
a very
turned
good
up.
job in Lewisham as the MP. It don't work for you. And you were saying, as she was giving her speech there, that you were taking credit for that. That victory.
Heidi, I wasn't. I was with Heidi 2 days ago in Swindon North and Swindon South, 2 seats. We've got to win. And it looks like we're going to win those. I've got to give credit both to Robert and to Heidi for those speeches. I think you want to see 2 classier speeches during the course of this night. But it's, I think, the start of what's going to be a great night for Keir Starmer's Labour Party. I think you're going to see across every region of the country Labour making gains. I think you'll see Labour, the biggest party in England, Scotland and Wales. And it's quite remarkable because Heidi and I sat through 2019 when we were genuinely fearing our party was on the brink of extinction. Heidi came to work for me as my deputy mayor for transport. Lo and behold, in 4.5 years, Keir Starmer's taken us to the cusp of power, quite remarkable, unprecedented. And hopefully during the course of the night, you'll see more and more Labour gains, Labour gains, Labour gains. That's the first one.
Did you think this night could ever be possible within the space of one parliament? And remember, we are still talking about an exit poll here, but it seems to be going the same way with the results.
So I don't care for
He'll have driven in his
when he first told me 4.5 years
big
ago,
posh car, wasn't he?
leader, I wasn't clear whether he could go on to be the Prime Minister. I was unclear what his motives were, bearing in mind how difficult the task was. But he had a sense of conviction and confidence that made him think he could do it. He made us believe he could do it, and he's worked so hard. He's built a team around him, the shadow cabinet, MPs, candidates, our staff, our volunteers, have followed his confidence and leadership. It's been difficult. There's been some wobbly moments. There have been times where we've thought it wasn't possible. In my wildest dreams, 4.5 years ago, did I think we'd be here? No. Keir did, though. and he deserves massive credit for getting us here.
Sadiq Mayor of London, you sound a bit like though you thought he was crackers to take it on.
Well, I love Keir, and I said to Keir, one of my best friends took on this job in 2010. We fell short in 2015.
Ed Miliband, you're referring
Yeah,
to.
I've seen great politicians take on the worst job in politics, being leader of Her Majesty's Official Opposition. Keir said he believed in himself, he believed in his vision, he knew about hard work, but Keir's motivation is public service. This guy took on cases for me without taking a fee. He would act for clients without asking for money. He believes in hard work. I think what you'll see is him being magnanimous tomorrow, him being humble, and him demanding every Labour MP served with humility.
Just to say that we've got another Labour hold. This is in Washington and Gateshead South. Labour have hung on to that seat. Sharon Hodgson is re-elected there as the
Hello, vote in Washington.
5 seats for Labour, 4 holds, 1 game. So a lot of those seats, in fact, all those seats are in the north. No, Swindon, we had Swindon South. So most of those seats in the north. What is it about the northeast?
Special place. It's just a special place. And interesting. Well, Naga Sally told us about all the lengths that they've gone to in the special paper and all the stuff. But interestingly, that seat in Washington Reform also, it appears, in second place there. But we'll bring you that result in detail when we have it. But Reform, just one of the headaches for the erstwhile Conservative leader Rishi Sunak. But of course, the huge move to Labour we're seeing is the biggest problem for him of all. Let's check in again with Victoria Derbyshire. Victoria, you're at the count now. Have you managed to glean anything from Conservative supporters there?
Honestly, Laura, not particularly. I can tell you that the verification of the ballot papers is almost complete, and the actual counting of the real votes will begin, I'm told, in about half an hour. There's a sort of quiet hum here as the verification continues. What I can tell you is, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Laura, the number of WhatsApps I've been receiving from senior Conservative politicians, which range from despair to some scepticism about the exit poll, particularly when it comes to the number of seats Reform are projected to win, and also some Tory MPs trying very, very hard to look for some positives in that exit poll. One senior MP's reaction to the exit poll was an expletive, which obviously I won't repeat right now in the early hours of the morning. Another said the exit poll is yes, exactly, which is why I'm not repeating it. Another said it was dire, and that he actually couldn't see the Tories even getting 131 seats. He thought Reform would get more than 13.
Super optimistic there.
Somebody else who's standing down was a senior cabinet minister on a much more upbeat note said, look, if Labour can turn the worst result since the 1930s into their best result, then we the Conservatives have it all to play for over the next 5 years. Just been chatting to the Reform candidate here, one Lee Taylor. He says he is hopeful of, quote, making a massive dent in Rishi Sunak's majority. The first time we are going to see the Prime Minister, as he still is, we're expecting at about 3:30, so in about 3 hours this afternoon.
I'm not staying awake for Rishi.
Candidates here,
3:30. No, thank you.
And Northampton at about 4 a.m. this morning.
Victoria, thanks very much indeed. We'll talk to you later.
Also with us here in the studio is Gus O'Donnell, former Cabinet Secretary. It looks as if...
Former head of the civil service on TV now.
Yes. Now, how is the civil service preparing for that?
Well, they've been preparing for a long time for all possible options, but this one looked very likely given the polls. So yes, it will be quite a dramatic time. They'll be sorting out the details of what happens tomorrow. If the polls are right, Keir Starmer will be clapped into 10 Downing Street about an hour after Rishi Sunak's been clapped out at Downing Street. Rishi goes to the King, offers his resignation, then Keir goes, and then the work starts. I mean, that's the thing, you know, the Cabinet Secretary is the ultimate wet blanket, right? They come through that door and they are on a high like no other high. They've just been clapped in and it's amazing. And then I have to say to them, well, actually, now it gets really tough. Yeah, I mean, I've got, they've got to sort out a whole cabinet, you know, appointing all the cabinet. They've got to read the briefs for all these, you know, that President Biden's on the phone, you know, what am I going to say to him? President Macron, you know, he's got all of those things going on.
There's a NATO summit next week.
NATO summit, you know, it's a minor matter of that, 9th to 11th of July. Then he's got the EPC, this European leaders all coming to Blenheim Palace towards the end of the month. He's got a huge amount on, and this is nothing to, as Cabinet Secretary, I'll be talking to that Prime Minister about minor things like, actually, we've got certain terrorist issues that I need to talk you through, certain intelligence issues, and there's the whole nuclear coding, you know, how many millions of people do you want to wipe out? If we're wiped out, those, you know, there are big issues. And remember, he's a human. His family are coming through that door and they're moving home. And so that's for his wife and children. You know, it's a massive event in their lives. And believe me, it's a very stressful job. And suddenly, whereas when you're in opposition, as you say, it's probably one of the worst jobs there is in politics, being leader of the opposition. When you're Prime Minister, it's relentless. And it starts tomorrow. And so, Keir, please, if you're listening, go to bed, right? Be ready for tomorrow.
He hasn't had his count yet.
There's no way he's going to do
Hoban has said Pancras hasn't called it.
It's going to be a big day.
Oh, no, it's going to be a huge day, whatever happens. And, you know, it looks very, very clear, the direction of travel, but the result and the scale of the result is still kind of, I know, well, Sadiq Khan, you're sitting there with a twinkle in the eye. You're not going to let me get to the end of the sentence that reminds our viewers that there still is a sprinkling of salt with all of this. But if the exit poll does give Labour a majority of this scale, what kind of government do you think that Keir Starmer is going to run? You know, Gus O'Donnell's just given us a horror story of all of the very serious issues. Chris has reflected already the tightness of the budget. Yeah. There ain't much cash. What kind of government do you think he'll run?
I think what we're going to get at last is a grown-up government, a grown-up Prime Minister. He's going to under-promise and over-deliver. He's going to be magnanimous tomorrow. He's going to reach across to colleagues from all sides of the House to bring the nation together. He's a unifier.
Like you've talked to him about his speech. Sounds like he's a preview.
He's unified. He will bring people together, and you know he's not sleeping tonight because he's working hard. He's a workaholic. He's getting ready for tomorrow. Big day tomorrow. That sets a tone in relation to managing expectations, but also making clear Team Labour knows what's expected from us. High standards, public service. You heard what Rob Buckland said about the consequences of bad leadership. We've had 5 since 2010. Can be very different.
It's interesting though, you say he's a unifier. Actually, not everybody in your party feels that way. Quite a lot of people feel in your party that actually he's booted out people who didn't fancy his agenda. Some of his colleagues also would privately boast about how ruthless he was to do that, and he had to make those decisions in order to be in a position to win. So I'm not sure that Keir Starmer, unity candidate, is what everybody in the Labour Party would say.
Yeah, you speak to those 410 Labour MPs tomorrow, and they'll tell you
any Labour MP is going to say nice things about the leader on day one if that's what comes to pass.
We are a united party. We've worked incredibly hard on Keir's leadership. We are not doing somersaults to celebrate this victory. We get one night to enjoy it. Tomorrow, back to work.
Okay, so you can. Thanks. I know we have to let you go, but it's been great to have you with us here in the studio.
They don't keep these panel members for long, do they? They're like on for about 10 minutes, then they're gone.
And that is that Labour have 5 seats there, 4 holds, 1 game. And
Hi Ross, how are you?
Reformer in second place there, but that's actually because of the wonderful way
that Nick's gone already.
Has been holding out. They've been coming second in so many of the seats that have taken place so far that we've had declarations on. So that's why they are up there with Labour, because of the size of the share of their votes. But all the declarations so far this evening have been for Labour wins.
Now, let's take you back to Swindon South. That result there, which was the first Labour win of the night, the first of them taking a seat from their opponents. We can speak to Sir Robert Buckland, who gave that very strong speech from the stage. Robert Buckland, like many people who will be losing their seats tonight from different parties, commiserations to you. We say that to all of the candidates who may lose out.
That sounds fun.
In your speech, you gave
You've been BBC One all night.
Warning. It was clear to your party not to carry on behaving in the way that it has, and not to go into some kind of circus in the way that you clearly feel they have done in recent years.
Laura, I'm fed up with performance art politics. I've watched colleagues in the Conservative Party strike poses, write inflammatory op-eds and say stupid things they know have no evidence for.
I like Carol Vorderman.
Concentrating on doing the job they were elected to do. I've had enough of it. I want the Conservative Party to get back to the ethos of doing stuff well and being competent, not pretending to please the media. If we can get back to that, then I think we have more than a fighting chance at the next election. But we need to do it quickly. We need to wake up now.
Who in particular are you thinking of has done that? You even say people have said things that are untrue.
Well, look, I think that we've seen in this election an astonishing ill-discipline within the party. We can see articles being written before a vote is cast in the general election about the party heading for defeat and what the prognosis should be. Is spectacularly unprofessional and ill-disciplined. That's not the Conservative Party I joined or I've been an active member of for now nearly 40 years. I expect more from colleagues. And I also expect colleagues in senior office to actually get a grip of their brief and portfolio and actually understand that politics is about hard choices. It's about doing the detail. Now, the Prime Minister understands that, and he is an admirable example of how to do the detail. But what is also missing is a narrative. What are we saying, particularly to younger voters? You know, in Swindon, I've got a younger than average demographic. What are we offering to them about owning their own home and having a share in the future of our country? Where's this?
You went for long? No, I'll be going to sleep soon.
The Conservative Party is more than just
Got work in the morning.
management machine. We should be representing the passion, the hopes of the next generation. And whilst we have done admirable things on education and supported older people in our society, we've really now got to look fundamentally at what we do for younger people. And it's not about left and right, Laura. It's about actually those who want to come into politics to do things rather than to be somebody. Now, I've lost my position. You know, I'm a member of the public again. Great, I'm Joe Public. But I tell you this, my political career is not over. And for the party that I love, I will do everything I can to make sure we are a credible party of the nation once again. Because that is where the Conservative Party wins, and that is what millions of people out there are crying out for. Those people who stayed at home today were telling us just as much as those who switched that they weren't happy with the Conservative Party. We've got to do better, and we've got to accept the judgment of the electorate quickly.
And everyone watching will hear
10 a.m. I'll be stuck into work.
in your voice and how strongly you feel about where it's gone wrong for your party. You say it's been spectacularly ill-disciplined and ill-judged for colleagues to talk about losing the election before it has actually happened. I assume there you're referring to Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, who did as much in the pages of the Daily Telegraph yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that's not an isolated example. You know, I'm fed up of personal agendas and jockeying for position. You know, the truth is now with the Conservatives facing
It's going on Suella Braverman.
it's going to be like a group of bald men arguing over a comb. You know, I came into politics to actually do government and to responsibly exercise power in order to make change in this country. I did that in office for many years. I'm proud of my legacy. I changed the lives of victims of crime, victims of domestic abuse and autistic people. I wanted the chance to do more for the people I care about. I've been denied that because the party around me just can't get its proverbial together. And I'm not going to use a four-letter word, even though we're well after the watershed.
Robert Buckland, Clive Myrie here. I mean, there is going to be a battle for the soul of the Conservative Party after this. If these early results are borne out more widely and the exit poll is correct, there is a sense that the party could lurch even further to the right and have those kinds of characters that you're criticising be in charge of the party.
Well, that would be a disastrous mistake, and it would send us into the abyss and gift Labour government for many years. You know, what happened tonight was a big vote for change. Labour are going to get a big majority, but you know, congratulations to them and good luck to the new Prime Minister. But it's not necessarily going to be the deepest of majorities for them, and they're going to need to listen to those
Robert,
who
I'm
are
so sorry to have to interrupt you there. We've got a
Another declaration come in.
Central and West Ward is as follows. Ali Afe, Liberal Democrat, 1,946.
Lib Dems have done terrible.
Francis Lazok, the Conservative Party, 4,200.
Conservatives have done terrible.
Ashton Hector Muncaster, Reform UK, 7,815.
Reform done better than the Conservatives.
Labour Party, 18,800.
Labour have won with a significant majority.
John Pearson, Green Party candidate, 3,228. Habib Rahman, Independent, 1,636. Yvonne Ann Ridley, Independent, 3,627. And that Chi Onwurah has been duly elected to serve as a councillor, as a Member of Parliament for the Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West constituency. Thank you. The Reform candidate is unwell and has had to leave the count. So I now invite Chi Onwurah to speak. Thank you.
We wish the Reform candidate well there. Ill, not able to make the count, and that's Ashton Muncaster. But they've come second. He's come second in that race. Labour holding on to that seat with a majority of 11,000.
Reform have had nearly a quarter of the vote so far.
Fairly low, 54%, but Reform have beaten the Conservatives into second place, and that is so far, and it's early, but it's the story of the night.
The pattern we might see replicated across the country. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. Labour down 14% in Newcastle Central. So no question whether they were going to hold the seat, really. They see a real drop-off in their support as Reform comes up by 11%, but the Conservatives crashing down by 16%. But let's show you the movement from Labour to Reform. Again, we're in the northeast, but
12% swing to Reform.
Such a pronounced Leave vote. A very
Hello, Peter.
pattern we're seeing there, Chris. I mean, we should underline it's a Labour win, but what's happening between Reform underneath the surface is fascinating.
It is, isn't it? And then we can piece together, I think, an element of what we see there in the numbers, not just in that seat, but in some of the early ones as far as Reform's performance, and then unpicking the language, the words that Robert Buckland was using to you there, Laura, in your conversation. Robert Buckland, a mild-mannered chap, but my goodness, you could hear his fury, his anger at his own colleagues, not just that article written by Sir Oliver Braving, the former Home Secretary in the Telegraph just the other day, but sketching out as he sees it what the party needs to avoid in the post-mortem that we're now seeing playing out on our programme tonight. Bald men fighting over a comb, talking about the prospect of the row to come in his own parliamentary party, which he won't be a part of.
Really angry, though. Really angry.
Yeah, and as I say, you know, Robert Buckland, for viewers who perhaps don't follow politics as keenly as others may, is not someone who grabs megaphones and shouts loudly into them for the sake of it. He's a mild-mannered, understated chap by normal demeanour. And there you could see just how angry he is, and just how angry he is, in particular, at his own colleagues, in his view, contributing towards the difficult night for the Conservatives and his own demise.
All right, Chris, thank you for that. It's going to be an interesting night, clearly, and we've got enough results now and the exit poll. And I don't know about you lot, but I think it's about time we saw the swingometer.
Oh, swingometer's coming out.
Yes, and Jeremy Vine has
Jeremy
the
Vine's
swingometer
loose.
in question in Cardiff. Jeremy.
Funny you should mention that. Yes, right here with it, Clive. So let's just explain. The swingometer measures the movement of votes between parties from one election to another. And if the proportion of votes stays the same, then the swing would be 0. And you can see the needle here. And if that were to be the case, then all the red seats stay red and all the blue seats stay blue. It's not going to be 0 after tonight. We were listening, weren't we, to Robert Buckland. You can see over here, his seat would fall on a 6% swing. There it is, Swindon South, and so it did. But Labour are going beyond that. I could put the half dozen results that we've had into the swingometer, and we can measure the actual swing. Not the exit poll now, this is the actual swing. So let's just move it and see what's happening. Before we look, 12.7% is the swing required for a majority of 1. If you have 12.7%, Labour have it in every single seat, they get a 1-seat majority. Where are they now? Just slightly shy of 11%. So that would have them, if it was 11% swing in every single seat, on an extra 98 seats. So you're thinking to yourself, how come this is an extraordinary night for Labour
BBC One.
with what seems to be a fairly modest swing so far? Now, okay, as we get more results, the swing may go up. At the moment, if it's 11%, if you simply paint them in logically, these seats are all Labour and these seats stay Conservative. But here's what's actually happening. In places where they need a bigger swing, Labour are getting it. So have a look at what our exit poll is projecting. And I'm just going to wash the red across the right-hand side of the screen here, and you will see. This is the remarkable thing about Labour's performance, is that where they didn't need a very big swing, for example, in their own already safe seats, they haven't got one. Instead, they've targeted seats they desperately need. Maybe they're in second place to the Conservatives. And it looks like, from our exit poll, predictions only, at 13%, they're taking all the seats. At 14%, they're taking nearly all of them. At 15%, and you know what? We should move it around a bit more. Where does this very targeted Labour swing stop? This is the secret of Labour's victory, if victory it is. This, remember, is our prediction. It's our exit poll. But it shows them, possibly in Romford, Redditch, Herne Bay, getting seats on a swing of 20%. Now, part of what's happening is the targeting of the Labour vote. The other thing is that the Conservatives seem to be hemorrhaging most in places where they're stronger. So for them, it really is a perfect storm.
All right, Jeremy, thank you for that. That's interesting, isn't it?
You promised a swingometer. It's an absolute swingometer for you. A very, very fancy swingometer indeed, ready for 2024.
It's not even a real swingometer, it's a virtual one. You remember those the real ones that they had in the studio? Cardboard. Bit of cardboard, yeah, but it's all high tech now.
I got paid £100 by the BBC programme Swingometer.
Oh, really?
You got paid, hang on, so former Cabinet Secretary Gus O'Donnell, this is a big revelation. We should welcome John Butler from Labour, who's sitting alongside. You got 170 quid for working on a swingometer.
Old boss is on the TV.
David Butler, we have a calculator and we turn the handle of the calculator, a piece of paper come up, I hand it to David Butler and say, the swing is 5.4% and the turnout is up, whatever.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, you heard it here first. Come on that much. We welcome you, Don Butler, from the Labour Party, and we'll check in with you shortly.
Right, we're going to go to Islington. And Helena Wilkinson, who's standing by there. And that is, I'm assuming that's Islington North for the Jeremy Corbyn count. Have I got that wrong? I've got that wrong. But no, I've got that right.
You have got that right, Clive. It's also, we're expecting two declarations here for Islington North, Jeremy Corbyn, and also...
Jeremy Corbyn's still around then.
What I'm going to do is step out of the camera, because I'm sure you want to see Jeremy Corbyn on the count floor, get a better view of him. You can see him having a chat to various people there. I saw him arrive about 40 minutes ago, looking relaxed. He's been chatting away. In the last 10 minutes, he did look at his watch, so keen to probably get a move on and get the declarations out of the way. But this is a unique battle here, because Jeremy Corbyn is standing as an independent against the Labour Party, the party which he was once leader of. And as I say, it is a very unique battle. Now, in terms of how his team are feeling, well, I think they are feeling positive, but it's interesting that no one really wants to talk to us yet, because I think the result at the moment, in terms of predicting it, is quite uncertain. But Jeremy Corbyn there standing as an independent candidate against the Labour candidate, Praful Nargant. He is yet to arrive, but we've also, as I say, Clive, waiting for Emily Thornberry, who is a candidate in the Islington South and Finsbury seat here as well. The hard work is continuing here. Verification for most of the areas is now complete, and so the counting is well underway. Lots of sweets laid out on tables. The bags have not yet been opened, but I did see one of the counters unwrap a banana, so clearly they need a bit more energy.
Oh, yes. We need some bananas here in the studio. I've only got some bit of fruit, nuts, peanuts here, but no bananas. I did suggest actually that. Oh, you've got some. Okay, I'm gonna have one of those later on camera.
Right. We need to crack on with this serious business of the evening. You two are enjoying yourselves far too much. I want to take us to our colleague Eileen McCall, who is in Rochdale. Good evening to you, Eileen. Now, lots of people watching tonight will remember that in February, in that by-election, George Galloway, veteran left-winger politician, came blasting back in and won the by-election there, trying to hang on tonight, but facing competition from former journalist, actually, Paul Wall, who's standing there for the Labour Party. So what's your sense of the way it's going tonight?
Oh, about George Galloway now.
Well, recent polls have shown that it's pretty close. Labour Party members who are looking at a bit of sampling seem a touch more relaxed now than they did at the beginning of the evening, but it is close and extraordinary given the national picture that you've been talking about over the last few hours, that we are talking about Labour nervousness in seats which are long-time Labour strongholds like Rochdale. But about 2 weeks ago, they actually called for more help canvassing in other seats they considered battleground states. Again, a similar profile where in some cases they won in 2019 by more than 20 points. What do all these places have in common? Well, they have high Muslim populations. And the feeling is that there will be, in a lot of those constituencies, a protest vote against the way Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have handled the Gaza crisis, the fact that they abstained from that November ceasefire vote, for example. So, as well as Rochdale, where you rightly say George Galloway is looking to hold on to the seat that he won in February, there are other seats to look out for later in the day. Some in Birmingham, Ladywood, Perry Bar, Leicester South as well, the Bradford seats as well, and other Lancashire seats in Blackburn, for example. So, as I say, interestingly, given everything that's going on, that potentially the Muslim vote from 2019 could have gone down from around 80%, according to a lot of research, to perhaps 60%. But that has also led to a lot of apathy among Muslim voters, if research is to be believed.
Elaine, thank you so much. It's one of the really interesting patterns we're going to be looking out for, not just as he was saying.
Oh, wow, am I tired.
Enormous impact with the Galloway by-election earlier.
Did you hear Brewdog offering 3 pints to anyone that's voted today?
Yeah, in those early declarations that we've had, the reform vote going up.
Wouldn't mind a 3 pint.
Vote beating the Conservatives into second place in a number of those seats.
There were no 3 pints at my polling station.
Being held by Labour, or one, as in the case of Swindon, by Labour from the Conservatives. And one of those seats that they're keeping an eye on reform is Ashfield. And Sean Dilley is there for us now. That is where Lee Anderson is standing. Local boy, a minor, started out as a Labour councillor. Then he went to the Conservatives. Then he was an independent. Now he's standing for reform. And they clearly are hoping, Sean, that they should be able to win this. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Anderson says that his views and his politics hasn't changed. He says the parties has. Lee Anderson isn't here yet. In fact, none of the candidates are here, but who are here are the election agents and the people who represent.
So some interesting candidates in Chesterton.
My shoulder a little bit of behind the scenes here at Ashfield, because some of the counting it has been rather close. We've been chatting to various party officials who are standing over with clipboards. They have the ability to look at the ballot papers. The secrecy of the vote's guaranteed, but they get to have a look who's cast, or at least, you know, that boxes have X's in them. So we've had a chat to Reform Party representatives. They say that it's looking on their number crunching, which they do on their clipboards, to be about 2 to 3% lead to reform. That's what they reckon. We've spoken to the same people from the Labour Party representing their candidate, Ria Key, and they say, well, it's too close to call. Well, for want of an old political expression for some of our older viewers, Mandy Rice Davis, they would say that, wouldn't they? The big scandal of the night here, though, Clive, is not the price of the coffee. It's only £1 a cup of coffee, but it turns out that they don't take cards. You have to have cash on you, so it's sort of a bit of an homage to its old-fashioned route. You're quite right. People are keeping their eye on Lee Anderson. And if the vote share that's seen in other constituencies or anything to go by, Lee Anderson, though he's not here at the moment, he's certainly going to be encouraged by them.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Sean, at the Ashfield count there in Nottingham.
It'll be a really interesting result when it comes in. Right, Dawn Butler, thank you for joining us here. London Labour MP. It looks like your party's heading for an absolute massive majority. If Keir Starmer has such resounding support from the country in the shape of a majority of 170 or so, you're a prominent figure on the left of the party. You've not always been content with how he's handled things. Do you think the left would have a responsibility, basically, to fall in line?
Well, we are a diverse party of,
and the fact is, we need to look at these results and celebrate these results. First of all, this will be a stonking majority that we should be proud of. I'm in politics to serve, but also to be in government. Being in
St Labour's losing votes in Wales, massive gains in Scotland,
in government, and I
losing votes in London, gaining in the North, Midlands, and the South.
I'm a loyal Labour politician who wants to be in government to govern for the people, and I'm excited about that, Laura.
One of the things, though, recently you and some of your other colleagues on the left made no secret of being very unhappy about how the leadership had treated a very long-serving MP, Diana Abbott, who's a trailblazer for so many people. And yet sometimes Keir Starmer's people, they might use this result tonight as a sort of vindication to say, yeah, we were right to be ruthless. We were right to hold the line. We were right to boot out people like your former London Labour MP colleague, Jeremy Corbyn.
I don't think it's about being ruthless. I think it's being in politics and doing.
Yeah, I didn't like the 20 miles an hour.
How Diane was treated was wrong, and in
I blame Buckley for that, Ali.
And
That's where it started.
As a Labour MP, and I think what's really important, actually.
No, I won't be on all night, Peter. Now I'll be going to bed soon. Work in the morning.
The Tories.
Lot to do.
Resoundingly, and they rejected the politics of hate. They rejected all of the cultural wars. They rejected all the stuff around the scandals. And so what we need to do is govern very differently from a government that's been roundly rejected by the public. And that's what we have to take from this.
What do you make of what we were just hearing from our colleague Ali Mitbull in Rochdale, where George Galloway won in that by-election back in February, but also suggesting there might be quite a few seats where actually some voters, particularly voters who are concerned about the party's position on Gaza, may have turned away from you because of that. And you worried that they might actually move out in some places where otherwise you might have walked it because of the party's position.
Well, I think that that's something that really has to be considered. If we're lucky enough to serve in the Labour government, and these exit polls are to be believed, and they are the most reliable polls of all the polls. How we do business and how we do international business and how we approach that needs to be truly considered. And I think the party's current position is the right position. It took a while to get there.
We just see Rachel Reeves there at her account in Leeds. You just see the side of her head. She's well on track to become the first female chancellor. We'll see by the morning if that comes to pass. But there she is at her account in Leeds.
That would be interesting.
She'll
make a great chance, Rachel.
We'll see if that comes to pass. What is interesting about the share of Labour's vote so far, and according to the exit poll, is that it could well be that Keir Starmer has a whopping majority of 170, but actually on a lower share of the vote than Jeremy Corbyn. What are your thoughts on that?
I think really you need to compare it to the Tory share of the vote, right? I mean, at the last election, what did the Tories get? Was it 37%? The lowest share of the vote in, I think, 23 years, and they served in government. So what I think we need to talk about is, they had a right to govern with that. So let's look at where we land at the end of this and what Labour's share will be. And at the end of the day, we will hopefully be in government.
But given that share for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017, does that potentially mean that even with a majority of 170, people on the left are going to feel that they have a right, that they do anyway, but have even more of a right to make their voice heard from the backbenches?
I think what the discussion will be about is PR, proportional representation. I think there'll be lots of people talking about PR. I think if you look at...
Well, you're not talking about that.
Well, I think public will be talking about proportional representation and whether we need to have a debate about it. And I've always said that we do need to have a debate about it around the country, because I think we're going to need to look at the share of the Green vote, the share of the Lib Dem vote, the share of the Labour vote, and then we need to do the number crunching when we see that.
Just one quick stat. Conservatives were 43.6% of the vote last time round, a bit higher than you were suggesting. I don't mean to put that into the conversation. Do you think that's going to come then, a conversation about the voting system after this election?
Oh, I think so. I think there's already, but if you think about it, there's already a debate around PR, and I think that there's always has been a debate around PR, but I think even stronger now there will be a debate around PR. after this.
But not at the high echelons of the Labour Party. One suspects if if on their first past the post you're getting a majority of 170.
Oh yeah, I mean we wouldn't argue with that. I mean,
Indeed.
This is delivered for us. But actually, at Labour Party conference, we did pass a motion on PR.
Well, Keir Starmer, I think, once upon a time believed that PR was a good system, but it's not something that made it into the Labour Party manifesto. But Don Butler, thank you very much indeed for now. Let's take a look then, as you were just suggesting there, that the turnout in lots of places has not been great, and the vote share for Labour, despite what looks like it's going to turn out to be a whopping majority, may actually not be as convincing as the way that the
Still not live from Wrexham.
80 back in 2019. Rita, you've been looking at the turnout. What's it panning out as?
Panning out as quite low at the moment, Laura, and this is based on the results that we have in so far. So we've had 6 seats declared so far, and we're looking at 54% turnout based on those 6 seats, which is, it's not resounding really, is it? 54% was what we got in Newcastle Central. Let me show you the whole graph here, because it does make for interesting reading. We go right back to 1980, when Margaret Thatcher was in power, and you can see there the heady days of turnout were in the high 70s. They went up actually in 1992, just peaking there at a little bit below 80%. Then you see something of a decline after 1997 when Tony Blair came in.
Those elections out, all the time.
Cameron, May, Johnson, the eagle-eyed amongst you will say,
Means different ministers.
There were no elections fought with Liz Truss as Prime Minister, which is why she is not up here on our chart. So at the moment, we are suggesting 54%. Now, that will change over the night, because obviously we've got many, many, many more results to come in. But it looks as if, our number crunchers are suggesting, it looks as if we might be on course in 2024 to have a turnout roughly around what there was in 2005. So that was the election, Tony Blair's third victory, and that was a turnout there of roughly 60% or so, a little bit higher than 60%. Anyway, we'll be keeping an eye on that, but that is where we are at the moment, Laura.
Rita, thank you. It's really interesting to see it in that historical context when you see that voters really, really engage, and maybe this time that won't have happened, but plenty of data still to be put in.
BBC News presenter eating, talking with a mouthful. Terribly rude.
Let's show you again the results of that exit poll. Labour, of course, hopes very much this will make their dreams come true and be something like the real result when we get it in full by the end of the night. Labour there just disappeared. They were on 410 seats projected.
All right, I'll wait for the next couple of seats to declare, and I'm going to go to bed, I think, because I am struggling to keep my eyes open.
The Liberal Democrats forecast also to have had an extremely successful night up on 61, but you can see there Reform suggested they're on course for 13 seats. Now, remember, we're being very cautious about the smaller parties like Reform and the SNP, who the exit poll puts on 10 seats. That would be an absolute thumping for the party who's been in control of the Scottish Parliament in Holyrood for some time. They are expecting to slide back, but perhaps not to quite that low level. And
I see the man who planned to kidnap and murder Holly Willoughby has been found guilty.
They'll have taken an extra one. But there you are, the big headline, Keir Starmer on the front of Old Broadcasting House with a projected 410 seats.
Indeed. Chris Mason, our political editor, is here. We've got a couple of nuggets.
Couple of nuggets. So the Liberal Democrats, just picking up on Laura's reflections there on their numbers, they are wearing broad smiles tonight. They're talking about Davies' dozen, the 12 seats that they're declaring victory in. I won't read them all, but just a couple that catch the eye. Wimbledon in southwest London, Cheadle and Hazel Grove in Greater Manchester, Wokingham, formerly the seat of John Redwood. And they also think they may well have won in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, which I'm told last went Liberal in 1906. So they are pretty...
the guy who boot dive.
Also, Harpenden and Esher in Surrey. Esher was the seat of the former Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, who was standing down at the election. But just a sense there of the geography.
No, I can't. I've done it before, but I'll do it now.
And of course, the Lib Dems, they're coming up with Davies' dozen So congratulations to them coming up with the first
Find
headline
another
of the night. Congratulations, Lib Dem. It's true.
Labour sources reckoning that, according to their data, perhaps 13 for reform, as projected in the exit poll, might be at the upper end of where reform end up.
But have you had any hint from Labour HQ of nervousness about some of their seats, even
Yes,
perhaps
it's going-
going to
it's going
reform?
to be
Because I've been
interesting,
hearing a little bit
yeah,
of that tonight.
Absolutely, keeping an eye on some seats in South Yorkshire, for instance, and elsewhere. So yeah, and of course both of those things could be true, couldn't they? But let's see.
And one other little nugget just before we moved on, our BBC colleagues on the ground in Basildon and Billericay, where the Conservative Party chairman, Richard Holden, did one of the quickest chicken runs you've ever seen in your life, stampeding to try to find himself a safe seat. But our colleagues there on the ground are suggesting that Richard Holden, who as Conservative chair theoretically should be in charge of this campaign, but he may well end up actually losing his seat. So we'll bring you more news from there as we hear that would be another scalp for the Conservative Party to lose to Labour.
It's all happening. It's all happening. But what's happening with the person, it seems as if, will be coming, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. His seat, of course, Holborn and St Pancras in North London, and Fiona Bruce is there. What are you hearing, Fiona?
Well, no nervousness here about losing the seat, I have to say. I mean, the counting is taking place now. They've got twice the number of counters here that they had last time around. Obviously, this is a very big night for Holborn and St Pancras. Let me just show you. So there you've got the ranks of desks, people counting. There's actually two constituencies being counted here. Holborn and St Pancras, which is Keir Starmer's, then Hanston and Highgate, which is a new constituency because the boundaries have been withdrawn. They're counting there. They're actually counting on two different floors. Keir Starmer's due to arrive here, we think, about 2:30, and we think that's when we'll get the result. We're all waiting for his moment when he comes out. Just thought I'd show you a little bit behind the scenes what it's like while you're waiting for the man who we think is likely to be Prime Minister turning up. Here we are with my colleagues. As you can see, it's a very glamorous setup, and there's a lot of crisps and that kind of thing to fuel everyone keeping on going. The one thing I have managed to find out, and I have to say Labour are being very disciplined about what they are saying as the night goes on. They're keeping a very tight rein on things. I've been texting MPs left, right and centre. What we do know is that there is an event happening in central London after this count. The party activists and staff are going to be there. It's a place in central London. They're not confirming that Keir Starmer will turn up, but to be honest, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. And then we will be trying to follow him there and see what happens later on.
Okay, Fiona, thank you. Gateshead Central and Wickham apparently is another Labour hold. So they have
That's another vote in.
that seat. Mark Ferguson.
One more and it'll be bedtime for me.
Okay, we'll bring you that result in more detail just as soon as we get it. But let's say hello to Diana Davidson, former Conservative MP, one of the standout victories.
Yeah,
of
Mandelson's
last time
back
around.
again.
Good to have you with us in the studio here, and we're rejoined again by Lord Mandelson. Diana, when you look at the kinds of results that we are expecting, this absolute historic crash for the Conservative Party, such a stark difference to when you were elected. Why has it happened, do you think?
Range of reasons. I think the key one, too, we've been in power for 14 years. It would be very unusual, I think, for a government to win again after 14 years. You know, over the course of a parliament, you make mistakes. Over the course of, what we have, 5, you're bound to make mistakes and tick off a lot of people. So I'm not particularly surprised that the cycle was due to come back around. But on this scale, particularly when you do contrast that to 2019, does feel difficult as a Conservative. You know, I'm a Conservative, I believe in Conservative values, and I firmly believe, respectfully, Peter, that we do a better job than the other guys. So to see this kind of result and see a lot of people who I would consider friends, good, hard-working people who've put their all into being members of Parliament, who are set to lose it through no fault of their own, it's devastating.
What do you think the mistakes were? So you cited the natural pendulum swing. Some people might think, and maybe that is part of what is going on tonight, but you also mentioned mistakes. So what were the mistakes, do you think?
I think the biggest mistake that our party has made over the past probably 3 to 4 years is getting too used to being in power and forgetting who the true opposition is. You know, we are supposed to be a united force fighting against the other guys, fighting against opposition parties, putting forth a united Conservative front. And I think we lost sight of that over the past few years and have found so many factions within our own that the infighting has begun. And we've been, frankly, airing a lot of our dirty linen in public in a way that I don't think is dignified for any party. And I think that's what's led to the scale of the defeat that we're seeing tonight.
I don't know if you heard the comments from your former colleague, Sir Robert Buckland.
I did.
He was talking about a political circus. He was talking about people not telling the truth. And you say it's the last 3 or 4 years when things have appeared to be divided and voters don't really like it. But actually, maybe it happened a long time before that. 3 or 4 years ago, it's only 2021. Before that, you'd already got rid of 2 prime ministers. David Cameron had to quit after the referendum. Theresa May was then had out by Eurosceptics plotting against her to install Boris Johnson. So who do you hold responsible? Because it's not like you suddenly started squabbling a couple of years ago.
No, I think, the European debate has existed within the Conservative Party for decades. And as soon as that one was to some extent settled, it felt like we just had to find a new squabble, a new thing to fight over. We've been fighting over the kind of culture war issues, over economic policy, taxation, whether we should, cut taxes, whatever. And it's been just really devastating to see because, as I say, airing all that dirty linen in public, I don't think there's a single individual responsible. I think for many people in the morning, once the dust has settled, well, we are in the morning, later on in the morning, once the dust has settled a little bit further, there are a lot of us who have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and I think all accept a level of responsibility for the position that we find ourselves in now. And not just in terms of the fact that, we're facing a crushing loss, but also responsibility to the country. Because as I say, I firmly believe that the Conservative approach is better. I think the Conservative government would do a better job than the Labour government. So I feel like in that sense, we're letting the country down.
This is really interesting because you say that 14 years is a long time and, no government could recharge itself after that length of time and it's probably inevitable that you lose power. Do you think the rot set in back in 2010? The charge from a lot of those people who are voting reform, who have moved to Labour, is that the country's gone to the dogs. So, trains, dreadful, sewage in the rivers, schools falling apart, a military that cannot defend these islands, a sense of decline. Is there any suggestion
Wrexham could declare any time now?
I think there's probably a grain of truth to that, but I think when you look at the wider infrastructure,
I was hoping it would declare before I go to bed, but I don't think it will.
I think it goes back generations, frankly. Generations of kind of short-sighted political cycles of trying to get the next quick win and not taking those long-term investment decisions that are going to be better in the long-term future. I mean, we look at our sewage infrastructure as one example. There has been decades of underinvestment in that, so you can't pin that just to a Conservative government.
But hang on, you had 14 years.
Yes, and also, sure, and your big mantra has been, we're going to cut taxes. If you cut taxes and you haven't got any growth, that means you've got no money to do all that stuff.
Well, you're right, but that's why growth is so important. It's about getting the right framework.
That takes time.
Of course it takes time.
Isn't the problem that in the austerity years of Mr. Cameron and George Osborne, the capital spending, the investment in our infrastructure was cut to shreds? I mean, there's a lot else that went on, a lot of spending on all the normal sort of everyday welfare spending and all the rest of it. But it left the
might be awake again by then.
Country and of our society and economy so much more weakened, so that when we did experience COVID, when we did have the unexpected outbreak of war in Ukraine, which took another sort of sway through our finances, the core of the country was just not strong enough to withstand this endless battering. And I think Clive may have a point here that it does go back to those early decisions, those cuts in capital spending, in infrastructure, and railways, and just buildings, and all the rest of it. That's what weakened us so early on, isn't it?
But the point I would push back on is we cannot simply keep borrowing to exist. We can't keep borrowing at every opportunity. And the big mission of that early Conservative government from sort of 2010 to 15 was to try and cut the deficit and start to get our debt down. Because as we know right now, our debt repayments monthly is currently larger than, but our debt repayments monthly is currently larger than our entire education budget. At some point, we have to take responsibility for that.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because John Curtis made the point a few days ago that the polls suggest that the public aren't interested in tax cuts if the NHS is falling apart. So it feels as if the argument from some is completely upside down.
But I go back to the point I was just making there about that point around we cannot just keep spending on the nation's credit card long term, because ultimately we are setting ourselves up for a catastrophe. So I think it's right that difficult
I would have
decisions
some
were made.
sympathy for that point of view. But even Conservatives now say that during the austerity years, the cuts were unjustified and excessive. And yes, we do have to grow our economy in order to pay for our public services. But the difference is that during the last sort of 14 years, we've had growth of between 1% and 2%. That contrasts, I have to say, with the New Labour record, which was of growth between 2% and 3%.
Okay.
Now we have even less.
Okay.
We have like 0 and 0.5%.
We just had 0.7, which was the fastest in the G7.
0.7
in a quarter. In a quarter.
We need more than 0.7%.
That's 2.8% a year if you
For goodness
extrapolate,
sake.
which is a very good level of growth indeed.
Okay, well, it's a debate
It's not a great record.
Well, it's a debate that's been running through the campaign, and it's a debate that's going to continue to run and run and run, the elusive search for growth.
Indeed, and there were plenty of arguments in favour of austerity, it has to be said, back in 2010. So let's get that. Chris, you want to
Just
come
a
in there?
quick nugget. I'm hearing from Labour sources that they think Islington North, where their former leader Jeremy Corbyn is standing as an independent against Labour. Labour are saying that seat looks challenging to them, which
Challenging
suggests
for Labour.
Right. Which suggests that at the very least it's close. So we shall see.
We could have another declare.
That's a fascinating kind of subplot in the grand evening of many, many stories, but something to keep an eye on.
And that would be if Labour was to lose that seat to Jeremy Corbyn standing as an independent, that would not be just bad news. It would really take the shine off some of this enormous victory that Labour is now expecting, according to the exit poll.
Looks like Northumberland might be declaring.
Pictures there of Northumberland, and the returning officer with an incredible hat is back at the lectern, and she's just putting her glasses on. Let's listen in, because we're going to get the declaration for the seats of Cramlington and Killingworth.
Cramlington and Killingworth parliamentary constituency.
Some places I've never heard of.
Hereby give notice that the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows: Tom Campion, Liberal Democrats, 1,898.
Lib Dems done terribly.
Gordon Fletcher, Reform UK, 9,454.
Reform probably comes second.
Emma Foodie, Labour and Cooperative Party, 22,000.
Labour landslide victory there.
Dawn Furness, Independent, 322. Ian Jones, the Green Party, 2,144. Scott Lee, Independent, 573. Ian Levy, the Conservative Party candidate, 8,592. Matthew Wilkinson, Social Democratic Party, 137. And that Emma Foodie is duly elected as the Member of Parliament for the Cramlington and
They've got an MP called Foodie. Bet she likes the food. 60% turnout there.
The Labour candidate, like lots of parts of the country, most seats, in fact, they're affected by changes to the boundaries, which means some seats have got new names. People with good memories might think, oh, where is that? But this is one of these new seats, Cramlington and Killingworth. Labour takes that. But again, crucially in that result, Reform beating the Conservatives into second place. Quick reminder of the numbers. Emma Foodie there at well over 22,000. But look, very, very tight. Only around 100 votes in it between Reform and the Conservative candidate, Ian Lee.
Laura Cusberg cannot do maths because she said it's only 100 votes. It's nearly 1,000. Never mind.
And the turnout, again, not great, 60%. But just look at the share of the vote here. Labour up 5 points, but look at Reform, up 13 points, and the Conservatives down 21. That has been the story of the night so far.
Oh.
Greens up just 2, Liberal Democrats down 1, and look at that swing from Labour to Reform, 4.1%. Reform Party, they're not winning any seats,
Right.
but their share.
Time for me to go to bed. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Broadcast for over 3 hours. In the morning, we will likely see a new Prime Minister if the exit polls are to be believed. Anyway, good night, all. See you. When I see you, don't know when I'll be. Might be tomorrow night.
Let me just
Depends
mention just a
how
moment
much
ago
sleep I get.
boundary changes, and
Bye bye.
guess we need to start from that point because I just got to explain this